Hello and welcome in to our fourth rendition of the Boys of Summer podcast. We are going to give you the May and June, well, I'm skipping May, we're going to jump right into June review. I am joined by my co-host, my co-commissioner, my friend, my rival, Eric Follman. Eric, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. We've already got some fun stuff happening today, so excited to kind of dig into that. It's been a month since our last show, and really, I mean, we just kind of discussed we're getting down to about a month before the head-to-head playoffs start, so it's getting into the down to the wire here in terms of that. Still a couple months left on the roto perspective, but getting fun.
Yeah, we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're just going to start off today. I want to have a little conversation of kind of baseball as a whole, like we usually do before we jump into the fantasy stuff.
Sure.
Let's have a sticky stuff conversation. How, Eric, do you think the sticky stuff crackdown has affected the league so far, and how do you like it?
I'll be honest, I didn't like. I remember watching a poll on a Cubs game a month ago, and it was like, what's your biggest issue with today's game? Is it this, this, that, and the most voted thing was, the sticky substances. And I'm like, man, how bad is it? Because I know you and Justin were big on like Garrett Cole getting cracked down on, and all these other guys, and maybe I was naive, maybe whatever. I didn't know it was as big of a problem as it was, and it really is seeming to be that is starting to change. And if you really look at the spin rates and the graphics, there's no way you can look at that as coincidence. Like clearly that crackdown has helped somewhat in the game. And we were sitting there spewing out like, what do we this? Do we do that? It's helped a lot. I mean, it seems like it has at least, and I wonder how much impact that'll have on the future. Because personally, I did not know it was really that rampant and that bad in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I think I was a little naive as well. And we look at like the first month or two of the season, and it felt like it was like, here we go, year of the pitcher. And it was like everyone had like 7 pitchers on their roster with sub 4, sub 3 ERAs. Everyone was just dealing at that point. And now we've kind of had this crackdown a little bit, and some of it gets contributed to like warm weather. Offense typically picks up in the summer when it gets a little bit warmer. But as we kind of go along here, we're seeing a lot of different pitchers. Spin rates are going down and ERAs are going up. I mean, just the other night, Darvish, I know he's a guy that's a spin rate guy that his spin rates have been down. He got lit up the other night. Bauer, he's been getting roughed up a little bit. Garrett Cole. I mean, even our stud elite pitchers seem to kind of be taking a little bit of a turn for the worse. And we're not seeing a lot of the dominant performances from nobodies that we were seeing at the start of the season. So I think offense has been up exponentially. I think it's pretty good for the sport. I know some may disagree, but I really think it has changed the landscape of the league a little bit.
Agreed. If only the Cubs could, get some of that offense.
I'll talk about some pitching regression. We won't go
God.
there with the Cubs, but yeah, I mean, they looked like the staff for the Cubs was decent for a month there, and now everyone has like a 5.
Who would have guessed that? Who would have guessed that the pitching staff would have been the
Yeah,
crux of the team this year?
you never would have known that the going into the season that the pitching staff for the Chicago Cubs would be the Achilles heel.
It
Never
was so good prior that we gave up a second place Cy Young finisher. I mean, like, come on.
I never would have seen that one coming. All right, hang on. I just paused that. I don't know why. Oh wait, hang on. My screen share is paused. Oh, so that was a little bit of a gaffe by me. I paused the wrong thing. Didn't pause the recording. But anyway, we are going to in today's pod, we're going to do some grade the trade as we usually do. We're going to talk about the standings. We're going to update on that. We're going to get a little talk about the drama from this morning here in just a second. We're going to do our power rankings, and we're going to debut a new segment today. We're going to do the biggest question, or one big question for each team. Eric and I both prepared a question for each team that we're going to ask. Not necessarily going to answer it, but just kind of the biggest thing from each team going forward. So before we go any further, we have to talk about the big blockbuster trade from this morning involving the commissioner, myself, and another one of the owners. In that trade, the commission, myself, sent out Ross Stripling and got back Willie Adames. Kind of sent waves throughout the entire league this morning. So wouldn't you have to agree that that kind of really changed the landscape of what we're doing here?
I would say it was a pretty big deal there. I mean, you literally picked up the two things I would argue that you were desperately missing, which is saves and stolen bases, and you got that.
See, you missed that, Eric. You missed it.
Oh, my bad.
Uh,
My bad.
I was teasing you a little bit. I was talking about the other big blockbuster I traded.
Oh,
with Ross Stripling and Willie Adames.
Oh, that was the big one. Yeah, I don't know why we're talking about that other one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that was the huge one.
Yeah, but all right. So I cut you off. You can talk about what happened this morning with our other trades. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll
I
give
think
my spiel, but you can start.
yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit in the chat there. It's definitely a sell move, which I 100% understand on Eddie's perspective. I mean, he's really the one, if not two teams that are in sell mode right now. I think Krim, you could argue, is the other one. But I just don't see the value there at all in terms of his perspective. I think Byron Buxton literally has 100 at bats in the major league level where he's been good, and it's been these 100 at bats. He's been awful every single other year from a fantasy perspective. What else could you see on there that would be good outside of stolen bases? His on base percentage has never been there. He's not home runs. He's not average. He's nothing, and he doesn't play 100 games. So at $9, yes, I would keep him. I'm not saying he's not a keeper player, especially from what he's shown this year. And is Zach Gallen a keeper? Maybe for Eddie's team, he could be at 16 salary. He's shown decent stuff in the past, but in terms, I understand that he traded a couple C players and they had to be traded. That's a good move on Eddie. Trade the C players that you can trade that are all stars. Mullins has had a great year. Hands had a great year and he's a keeper. Rodon's obviously second in Cy Young right now. I think the only person ahead of him would be Lance Lynn. So Kyle got second in Cy Young, an absolute all-star in Cedric Mullins, who's having an amazing year. And he got a pretty darn good closer with under a 3 ERA for a guy that's had 100 good major league at-bats.
All right. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But I'm going to put a little bit of context on kind of what went down, how it went down, and a little bit of how we need to think about this trade. First off, I know there's some frustration that Eddie's been a little bit hard to reach, and I understand that. What you have to understand is I have sent Eddie about 7 text messages that I got like no response from. I have been badgering him and and getting little to no response. Finally sent him a trade like yesterday, or sent him a text like yesterday at like 4 o'clock. Got back to me about 10 a.m. this morning. Told him, I was like, hey, talk to me about some of these C players. Are you looking to move them? I was like, how, Kalenic is on the table, Buxton's on the table. So we kind of started negotiating. We came to, our agreement that we did. Now, with that being said, if you are thinking about this trade in a 2021 mindset, you are thinking about this trade in a very closed mindset. We can all agree that Eddie is pretty much out of this league. He was on life support, not out of the league. Not out of the league, out of the running this year. He's pretty much on life support, ready to pull the plug, and he was just kind of looking for a way to offload these assets that he has. These C players that cannot be kept. Rodon cannot be kept. Mullins cannot be kept, and Brad Hand is a $12 closer. Now, with that being said, if you were to plug this into a trade machine, yeah, no shit. There's a clear winner and a clear loser in this landscape. Cedric Mullins and Carlos Rodon, Eric just got done telling us how good they've been this year and how good, hopefully, they will continue to be the rest of the year if they can keep up this. Buxton is on IL right now. Zach Gallen is on IL right now. Yeah, no shit that this year, this is not going to be beneficial for Eddie in 2021. Now, Eddie, knowing that he is pretty much out of the running, out of the money this year, he's 64 points behind third place in Roto. He's 23 wins behind in head-to-head. He's probably not going to, he doesn't really have the roster to really make a run. It's not like he's getting like a bunch of injured guys that are coming off IL. He's not going to place in the money this year. So this is a move for 2022. And what in 2022, what Eddie just traded is he traded a $12 Brad Hand for Zach Gallen and Byron Buxton. Now, you can say what you want about Byron Buxton and Zach Gallen on what their values are, on what they could be. Yes, Byron Buxton's battled some injuries, but his latest injury was him getting hit on the hand. Getting hit on the hand and breaking a bone does not make you injury prone. That's a fluke injury. Yeah, he's had some soft tissue stuff in the past, but he has played 462 at-bats in a season a couple of years ago. Now, Byron Buxton came into this year as a changed player. No, you're right. Throughout his career, he is not that much of a power hitter. But if you were to look at the underlying numbers of what he did going in from last year to this year, Byron Buxton has been a changed player. He hit 13 home runs in 39 games last year. He started to flash that little bit of power, but it still wasn't really a big enough sample size to prove what he was. Well, coming into this year, he confirmed that that's the new player that he was. He hit 10 home runs and 100 at-bats. Even if Byron Buxton, okay, maybe he's going to end up on IL once or twice a year, even if he only gets 400 plate appearances next year, at this pace, he's a 40 home run, 20 steal guy with a 409 on base percentage. I'm not saying that that's what he's going to be, but that's what he was on pace for this year. And he even came off IL, off of his hamstring or off his quad injury. He hit like 1 or 2 home runs before getting hit on the hand. This is the new and improved Byron Buxton, and all the batted ball numbers back that up. He's 99th percentile in speed. I think he's 93rd percentile in exit velocity this year. He was absolutely smashing the ball. And at $9, that is an incredible value on a guy that needs to take a swing on some higher level talent. So we move on to Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen, over his career ERA is 3.08. That's not taking some small sample size and extrapolating.
How many times has he pitched 100 innings?
He's been pitched 100 innings because we didn't have a full season last year, and he got called up.
What about the last 3?
He got called up in 2019. That was his debut year. When do you want him to pitch a full season? This year.
But I'm just saying, like, is he even a keeper? Is he even a keeper?
Yes, he's a keeper.
Oh, man.
The guy that's had a sub-3 ERA in every single year,
except the year this year.
Except this year where he's battled injuries. He's battled injuries. What do you want me to say?
But going back to the Buxton thing real quick, when you're talking about Buxton, he's in year 7. How can you say he's a changed player? Gary Sanchez had a huge
because
stretch.
He's approaching his prime.
When's the are we still doing the 27, 28 prime?
27 years old.
Acuna's 23. Like, when's your prime in baseball? Like, it could be 23, 24.
29.
Buxton's entering year 7. And anyone can have a hot stretch. Gary Sanchez, remember a guy named, I think he was on the Dodgers, real hot phenom coming up. I think his name was Yasiel Puig. Where's he? He had a hot stretch.
He's battled some other stuff. He actually got COVID, and he was playing really well until he got COVID that last year. Now I don't know where he's at now.
He's not even in MLB. He's in an international league. Anyone can have a hot stretch in baseball.
But he opted out. He opted out when he got COVID last year, or else he would have been on. Was it the Reds?
My thing is, you should know more than anyone. Baseball is a game of, over the course of a season, stuff goes the way it's supposed to for a player. And a player in year 7, I'd like to see other players that have played.
Year 7, he debuted when he was 20, and he's been a top prospect his entire time. He's like the number 1 prospect in the Twins organization. He's just never been able to stay healthy. And if you want to argue the injury prone stuff, that's fine. He's had some soft injuries.
Then put up numbers if you've been injury prone. He's not even put up numbers.
He's been injury prone. Yes. In 2018, in 2019, he has not played a full season. He played 140 games in 2017. That was pretty decent. He stole 29 bases, hit 16 home runs before he kind of discovered what he could be as a power hitter. 2018, he battled a lot of injuries. I think he ran into a wall that year. 2019, battled injuries, only got 271 at-bats. Yes, that's fine. He's a little bit injury prone. But for $9, you get him, but you also get his replacement. Because guess what? With that being said, you know who I replaced Byron Buxton with on my roster? I replaced him with Tommy Pham. And so it's not like you're not getting zeros when Byron Buxton is hurt. You're also getting the stats from the guys that you replace him with. In my case, I was able to replace him with Tommy Pham. So don't you get to add in the stats from the players that replace him if and when he gets injured? So replacing him with the 12 stolen bases and 9 home runs that I've gotten out of Tommy Pham.
I'm looking at it. I think from your perspective, you obviously killed this trade. I'm looking at it from Eddie's perspective. I can 100% see why you did it but
I'm just trying to explain the value of Byron Buxton and Zach Gallen. How they're not zeros.
But the thing is, Byron Buxton's a keepable player at $9. But that does not. My point in the chat earlier was that does not mean that he couldn't have gotten more for.
What did you offer?
What's that?
What did you offer?
There was no point. He didn't respond to nothing.
I think if you were to come to me and you were to say that you offered 2 better assets, he told me that he wanted 2 assets for some of these guys, 2 better keepers.
It's good that you got a response for that one.
The better assets than Byron Buxton at $9 and Zach Gallen at 16. Zach Gallen, I don't care. I would value Zach Gallen as a top 30, maybe a top 20 pitcher when healthy.
But Buxton is not a top 20 outfielder.
No. Zach Gallen, I said.
Okay, I was gonna say Buxton's not a top
Byron
20
Buxton
outfielder.
Yes, he is. He is top.
No,
20.
Dave, I can name 20 dudes right now that are better.
Yes,
20
right now
dudes
because Byron Buxton's hurt.
But
Of
no, I
course
can
you
name
can't
20 dudes right now that are easily better than him, dude.
No, not based on what Byron Buxton was this year. Byron Buxton in 100 games was on pace to hit 50 home runs and steal 25
Oh my
bases.
God.
That's Ohtani. That's Ohtani right now.
We can't look at paces, man. We have 7 years of
Yes,
data to
but it's
back
not
up.
a pace of when he was good and then he sucked. He was good up until he got injured.
There's a lot of people that are good for the first 20 games.
A bad fantasy player.
There's a lot. He's been a horrible fantasy player for 7 years, man.
He's not been
7
horrible.
years.
He would have been drafted if he was horrible.
Well, yeah, you can have him as like a fourth outfielder, but you're telling me
he had 13 home runs in 39 games last year
with 2 steals and a 267 OBP.
Yeah,
he had 2. Listen, he played.
Out.
He played. Look at that. He played how many games last year? 40. So that's a quarter of a year. He was on pace for 8 steals. If you want to go on paces, he was on pace for 8 steals.
Yes, because he's transitioning to over being a power hitter, and then he.
Oh, okay. Okay. Come on.
I didn't have.
So if he's transitioning to being a power hitter, then we shouldn't expect steals from now on. So that can't be part of your argument.
No, he's still got 5 steals, but I wouldn't expect him to steal 40 bags anymore because of the injuries that he's had. I don't think he's a 40 stolen base guy.
So, and he's not a 300. He's never been a 300 OBP guy in his career.
He had a 314 OBP in 2019.
I mean, but career numbers, he's got under a 300 OBP. And that's what I'm saying. My crux of the argument is it's not that he's not a keepable player. With the season he's had, I completely agree with you. At $9, if I had him on my team, I'm keeping him. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Eddie could have gotten way more than that if he would have hit the market.
If he had a better 100%. Offer on the table, he would have accepted it.
Who knows? When the dude's not even responded to any offers or declined them, how do you know?
He looks at all the offers. Tyler told us that. He said he's looked at the offers.
He told us that today.
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying.
He told us that before. He told us a week or 2 ago when they were out golfing.
My thing is, is he actually declining them or is he just looking at them?
He's looking at them. And he said before, and that's what Tyler's like, well, I didn't realize we had to accept or decline every single offer we ever got.
No, you don't. And I let some sit too. But I mean, if you're just sending them and nothing's getting responded to, what are you, I mean, assumptions, right? What's your assumption?
Am I frozen?
Your faces, yeah.
Okay. So just my face. All right. Weird. All right.
Maybe turn camera on, turn off.
As long as you can hear me, I guess we'll continue on. But
I just look at other teams that need it, and I don't know. It's one of the things. Everyone does it differently, but when you see, like, obviously, there's no question that Eddie's selling. There's no question that trading those C players was the right move, and it would have been silly for him not. It would have been more crazy if he didn't sell those guys because of how good they are doing. But to sit there and say like Byron Buxton's just like this huge haul he's getting back, or Zach Gallen, who's never pitched 100 innings in the league yet, I just. Or in a season yet. It's just, I think so much more could have been had. So much more. And that's props to you. If anything, I'm giving you props for being able to pull off that trade. I mean, that's great.
For what it's worth, as I can't remember if I told you this or not, but I said the main chip in the piece was either going to be Kelenic or Buxton. And he preferred a $9 Byron Buxton over an $8 Jared Kelenic.
Who wouldn't?
So do you value Buxton over Kelenic too?
Well, if you're looking at this, when you're looking at this season, what Buxton provided this season, those 100 at bats.
No, I'm talking about who would you rather have on your roster right now for the next 3 years? Would you rather have a $9 Buxton or an $8 Kelenic? Because that's
I'd probably go off Buxton because he's done
higher trade value.
I would probably have picked Buxton for the extra $1 because he's shown this year that he can play at the major league level. There's zero indication yet that Kelenic can play at the major league level.
I have had owners who have contradicted that, and I won't name names, but I've had negotiations where people have preferred Kelenic.
And I think that's a fair argument. But I think if anything, Kelenic should have been thrown onto it. That's what I'm saying.
So because. But I'm just saying, so he preferred so he values Byron Buxton as looking at what the upside can be. He values Zach Gallen, and he views him as a guy who, for the first 2 years of his career, before he battled injuries this year, had a 2.81 ERA in his first year, a 2.75 ERA in his second year, way more than a strikeout an inning. He had 96 strikeouts in 80 innings in 2019. He had 82 strikeouts in 72 innings last year. High strikeout, very low ERA.
Let me say this. Brad Hand was more keepable than Zach Gallen.
No.
Yeah. Look at Brad Hand's stats.
Brad Hand is how old?
Brad Hand, it doesn't. Brad Hand's on pace for 30 plus saves. He's on pace under a 3 ERA as a closer is very, very good. And I know you got a lot of players on your roster, but I think there's a lot of teams that would keep Brad Hand next year at
Okay,
$12.
you can send me your C closer because I can tell you right now I will not be keeping Brad Hand.
I know you won't. I get that, but I think there's a lot of teams at $12 if he continues that season where he's at 35 saves and a sub 3 ERA for $12. There's a lot of teams keeping him.
All right, so I think we've kind of ironed it out enough. I think we gave our cases.
There we go.
Do you have any other gripes? My last thing, I guess, before we move on is, and not particular to this particular trade, but we cannot tell teams how to run their individual teams. You can run your team however you want to run this team. And I know there's a difference, and I know the word collusion gets thrown out quite a bit. And I've had some discussions with some league members as well about kind of what that means and about it. Now, here's the thing with collusion. Collusion is two teams getting together and kind of doing some like back room under the table kind of stuff. Just because there's a clear winner and a clear loser of a trade does not mean that there is collusion, because you cannot predict the future. You cannot tell someone how to value a certain player, and you cannot tell somebody how to run their team, what they should do with their certain assets, who they shouldn't trade for. I mean, we can, because that's what we do in the podcast. But I mean, we can't dictate how teams can or cannot run their team. And
I think go ahead.
I would say I've been in leagues where they have created 1,000 rules. And I think I've said this before, where they have rules where you can only trade with this number of people within the standings, and you have to trade this number of person, this amount, this ownership person with this ownership person. And what it turns into is you can't trade with anyone, and you can't have any fun. And if you're in a last place, you can't trade with them because you can only trade with the 12th place team, and they're not going to be buying either. And it's just a giant clusterfuck, and it's not fun for anyone. So I want to be able to keep kind of the open trade lines. And I know people are frustrated that they couldn't get some of these guys that have been traded off of owners who may have been a little bit harder to reach. I understand that frustration. It frustrates me too. Trust me, it is not going unnoticed, and I want that to improve. So your opinions on that are being heard, but at the end of the day, we have to send your best offers over, and we cannot tell people, even if you think one team won a trade clearly and another team lost a trade clearly, that does not mean collusion, and that is not necessarily bad for the league. Teams can run their teams how they want to run them.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is I hope that, I don't know, obviously you don't have to make a trade at all during the year, but this was his one and only trade he's made all year too, which
really?
I think that's somewhat of what people are like, why now kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure this is his only trade he's done all year.
Yeah, we can look into that. Let's see, transaction history, trades for let's see, yeah, so that was been his only trade this year. It's not coming up in here because I haven't sent it through.
And that's kind of what I think a little bit of it. And I'm not saying you have to trade, because like you said, you can't tell people how to run teams. I've gone fantasy football seasons without making a single trade all year. But I think there's a little bit of like, what all of a sudden now there's a trade, you know what I mean? Like, what was the deal?
If that is your argument, hey, I am 100% behind you. I understand that, and I understand your frustration, and I agree with it. And I think that we need to do our best to make sure that we have 14 owners who are active in the chat, who are active in trade talks, who are clear with what they are trying to do with their teams, and in order to have as best league as we can. Because you're right, we can't have members who, hey, only 2 people can reach these these certain owners, and the other 11 cannot reach them or don't have a way to reach them. We need to kind of iron some of that stuff out, and we need to do a better job with that. And that's something
it's year one of keeper, and I think it's going real smooth so far, for the most part. Yeah, I'm loving it. So
all right, cool. So we can move on now. You're going to give that trade an A for me and an F for Eddie. I think each team, if you think Eddie could have gotten better value, I'd say show me the offer that you sent him that would be better than those 2 players, than the upside of those 2 players. I won't grade it because I was involved, but you can give your grades.
I do have a little info that Dave told me that he would have given up Rizzo and Schwarber for the same haulback.
I don't think that's a better offer.
Based on what?
I think that Buxton's a better player than Schwarber, and I think that Gallen's a better asset than Rizzo.
Schwarber's had 3 seasons better than Buxton.
No, he is not.
Yes,
Oh, well,
okay, well,
okay.
we
All
don't
right.
have to get
Okay.
into that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
We don't have to.
You
This
are right.
season's already won. His 30 home run seasons, and yeah, he's had a few already better.
Okay. All right. So we need to move on to, we actually have a bunch of blockbusters to talk about.
We did.
So we're gonna go in reverse chronological order, so nearest back to soonest, and we move on to the trade between Chris and the Beantown Boys, Bryce, which sent Trevor Bauer, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Jesus Aguilar over to Christopher, and Christopher had to give up Sean Manaea, Dansby Swanson, and Aaron Savale. What were your initial reactions to this trade, Eric?
I actually, again, think I thought quite differently than you. I don't think that was a bad return for Trevor Bauer. You get Sean Manaea, who's always been like a decent 3/4 in his career. I've always been a fan of his. He's been a decent pitcher. He's always had a little bit lower on the Ks. He's not going to be a huge K guy, but he's a solid 3 in a rotation. Savali's a guy that has pitched really well this year. Again, not a K guy, but pretty good ERA, and he had a really good ERA in 2019 and 57 innings as well. I don't mind this because I feel like Bryce is getting a couple decent, maybe 2, 3 pitchers back, number 2 or 3 in the rotation. He gets Dansby Swanson, which I would say is a fringe starter in fantasy. I think there's some times where he really struggles, but I could see where he's a
Very
fringe.
low OBP.
Yeah, exactly. The home runs, the RBIs, the runs, he's going to get a couple steals here and there. I don't know if he's like a for sure starter, but to get return that for a guy that might not pitch the rest of the year, which could happen, because it just did get extended another 7 days. I'm curious if this is a move that could make sink or swim Chris, because if Bauer doesn't return and he just lost 2 guys in Manaea and Savali that have actually been contributing, and one of the main reasons he's on top of the standings, he had to throw in Eduardo Rodriguez in his rotation. I mean, Aguilar too, let's not forget he's had a really good season too, but
Yeah.
um I don't really think this was as bad as you might have thought for a return for Bryce.
Yeah, that's fair. You bring up a lot of good points, and I guess that Sean Manaea has pitched better than I've kind of given him credit for. I just look at this trade and I'm like, who's like the blue chip in this trade that you're giving up for Trevor Bauer? I was like, who's like the
100%, yeah.
really good who's like the for sure starter, like the for sure keeper in this deal? And it's like, okay, like Manaea and Savali are good, like they're probably going to be keepers, but like neither one of them has been like, I don't think either one of them is like a top 50 pitcher right now. And Dansby Swanson, he's just kind of, he's okay. Like he's a good utility bat, but he's got a 296 on base percentage. And he's never really flashed. I don't think he's ever had a 30 home run season. His career high in home runs is 17. His career high in steals is 10. So like
Right.
we're talking about like a guy that's just not a high ceiling guy.
He's had a little bit of a better career than Buxton, but
Yeah. And so I think the biggest gripe for me in this trade, I liked the deal for Chris more than I liked it for Beantown Boys for Bryce. But I feel like this is probably the best offer he had on the table. My biggest gripe was that that Bryce had to give up Jesus Aguilar.
that was interesting. Yeah.
In
And
a
is Aguilar
vacuum,
is Aguilar a C player or an A?
he is a C.
Okay. So
In a
yeah.
vacuum, if it was those 3, Manaea, Swanson, Savale for Trevor Bauer, I would have liked it a lot more. But I could argue that Jesus Aguilar is probably the 3rd best player in this deal.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean, you
probably
could very, yeah.
I think that's the thing that bothered me the most about it was just kind of that and the return he got. And Eduardo Rodriguez, I'm not super high on him, but he's got potential. I think he's a jag.
Okay.
I think he's just a guy.
Yeah.
I think you can find Eduardo Rodriguez. You can find 100 of them on the waiver wire.
But I mean, yeah.
I'm not super high on him. He can be kept, but I'm pretty sure, but I don't think he will be. So I don't know. Bryce, he fills a hole. And the more days go along, we're thinking maybe Bauer doesn't pitch this year. And if Bauer doesn't pitch this year, then I do think this is a win by Bryce. So it's kind of to depend. Christopher takes on that risk. I don't know if that risk was needed, but I feel like maybe you always just have to swing for the fences with some of these higher end guys.
And that's the thing with I think Chris, this isn't a bad move on his end either, like you said, because this is like I'm first right now and I have a chance to lock in another ace pitcher. So I see the reason why both
Yeah.
teams did it 100%. I mean, Chris is thinking, hey, if he comes back in 7 days, I just added another star to my rotation that's already great. I mean, what are you missing out on? So I think he's sitting on pins and needles, really hoping that Bauer pitches again.
Yeah, so for that, I'm gonna give Bryce a B minus. Actually, I'm gonna give Bryce a C minus, and I'm gonna give Christopher a C plus. I don't think it really. I think both teams didn't really do a good job of filling the needs of their individual teams. Bryce just keeps giving up offensive pieces, and that was kind of the one thing that's been carrying him this point. And he didn't really get like a surefire stud back. Like he needed a high strikeout guy to kind of fill that gap of strikeouts that he's fallen behind by playing all
Yeah.
those relievers at the start of the season. And who was a high strikeout, high upside guy? Trevor Bauer. He
Yep.
was the exact guy that Bryce needed. And I know he's kind of got some personal stuff and, vendetta against him. And I understand that. And I understand not wanting a guy like that and supporting him, in fantasy. I understand that. But if we're looking strictly at the needs of both teams, I think Bryce needed a guy like Bauer, and I don't know if Christopher needed to take on the risk of Bauer, because if Bauer doesn't come back this year, Christopher is very thin at starting pitching.
I honestly think if Bauer does not come back this year, Christopher won't. He's in question of cashing in the roto. I really do, because you just gave up Savali and Maneo, who have been, again, a big part of the reason why you're there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so move on to the next trade. Logan Gilbert for Yimi Garcia. I'll go ahead and take the lead on this one. This was highway robbery. I was in a very desperate place, and Christopher knew it. He took advantage of that. I regret it 100%. I was hoping that Yimi Garcia would not give up 4 or 5 runs in like his second outing with me. I don't even know if he's going to be the closer anymore in Miami. And Logan Gilbert is pitched like an absolute stud. He's lowered his ERA to sub 3, I believe, 3.5, but he's at like a 2.2 ERA over the last like month or so. Let's see what are his 30-day stats. His past 30-day stats: 2.33 ERA, 0.7 WHIP, 30 strikeouts in 27 innings. He's pitching like the top prospect pedigree that he was. And so, I give myself an F. I give Christopher an A for this one.
Yeah, I mean that one's a tough one. Obviously, you're going for a need. Gilbert's looking promising right now, and 3.5 ERA, 53 Ks and 40 innings. Again, I think that's a guy that could start on quite a few teams right now with the way he's been pitching.
Yep. Not a whole lot more to say about that. Do you have a grade for it?
I'll give you a D, and I'll give Chris a B plus on that one.
All right. So next we got Domingo Herman, Randall Grichuk, and Alek Manoah heading over to Bryce for Charlie Morton. This one was a little not contentious, but there was some guys that had some opinions on this one. And the ironic part about it was that the opinions went both ways on it. And I really like this trade for both teams. There was owners that said he gave up way too much for Charlie Morton. And then there's others that look at this and go, that's all he had to give up for a guy like Charlie Morton. So, there's both ways. What was your kind of feel for it?
I think it's one of those things. Is Jay trying to win now? Because Charlie Morton's obviously, if we're talking about old, he's very old. But if he's going to contribute this year, and if that's what Jay needs as a pitcher, then he got that. 100%. So and that's the way we got to look at it, right? Just like teams do in real life, that they'll make moves to win this year. But I will say Alek Manoah has not pitched bad. So I wonder on the desperation of that, and I also wonder like, wow, could
Player.
Yeah, he is a C player, granted. And that was a little surprising in itself. But Grichuk's been pretty solid this year. I know he's never been a big OBP guy, but home runs, RBIs. Herman's not really baseline startable right now. But if you can get a guy like Morton for that, like you said, if Manoah's a C,
289 on base percentage.
Yeah, Grichuk.
I kind of 16 homers, 57 RBIs for $1 keeper is decent.
Right. I think honestly, I like this a little bit more for Jay, simply because he basically, for lack of a better word, got close to an ace. 99 innings, 114 Ks. The ERA is a little higher than you'd like, but he needed a pitcher. He got a pitcher. And really, at the end of the day, when you look at 2022, didn't really give up a lot.
I think that that Jay overpaid here. I think that at giving up Alek Manoah, I don't know how much of an upgrade Charlie Morton is over Alek Manoah. Randall Grichuk is really good value for $1, although I look at his on base percentage at 289. I'm like, ooh, maybe it's not a good value as I thought it was. And Domingo Herman, he's kind of been just a guy as well. I don't really know what you're getting out of him. He high upside kind of guy. But those three for a guy like Charlie Morton seem like a lot, but rightfully so. This was the right move for Jay. And as we talk about a little bit later, the way it really rounded out Jay's pitching staff, as we can see here, to where he slides into like basically Charlie Morton's like a starting pitcher 5. If Castillo regains form, he goes Garrett Cole, Kyle Hendricks, Luis Castillo, Hyunjin Ryu, and Charlie Morton is his 5.
It's a really solid 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he didn't really need Domingo Germán. He didn't really need Alek Manoah, and he was able to fill his outfield spot. What he's got with Reynolds, McCutchen, Yastrzemski, and Stanton. So it's not like he really needed Grichuk anyway. So I really like the way he kind of filled out his roster. Well, he didn't really fill out his roster, but kind of traded in those chips for an upgrade at starting pitching. I think he did the right thing. I'm gonna give him an A.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Jay probably an A as well. I'll give Bryce like a B- on this one just to see what he could do with it. The interesting thing for me was actually a little bit of who was dropped. I know Bryce was big on the prospect train. I am curious to see, because I know Bryce is dropping a little bit in the standings. He's obviously still got a shot in the head-to-head playoffs too. Still a lot of season left, but Julio Rodriguez was dropped, and he's a top 10, 15 prospect who could be in AAA very, very soon. And I thought that was interesting to hold on to him that long, to drop him kind of this late in the process.
Yeah, that's tough to drop him this late in the process. Jesus Luzardo as well, who's pitched like ass, but
Right.
they're kind of top prospect guy. Yeah, that was kind of tough for him to kind of do that. But I mean, Julio Rodriguez for $1 would be a decent keeper, but for Julio Rodriguez for I think $8 or $7 or $8, whatever.
Right, and that's where you got to start. Yeah.
That's kind of a lot of salary to pin for a guy who probably won't even reach the majors till maybe even like mid-season next year.
Right. Yeah.
Knows when exactly he's going to get up. So maybe Julio Rodriguez wasn't even a keeper anyway, if we kind of look at it like that. And then by that time, he'll get half a season of him for $8. Then I'll have to pay his contract extension. Then I'll have to pay $13 for him before he even knows who he is as a player. So
Yeah.
I would have dropped him as well. I don't really hang on to the prospects that aren't really on the fringe or on the cusp. Just because it's kind of a lot of salary to keep around, especially when my team is in shambles with injuries. I wouldn't have been able to hang on to him. But I'm going to give Bryce an A for this one as well. I think he got some arms in Manoah and Domingo Germán, which he's desperately needed. He just kind of needs some guys to play some matchups, to throw out there, and to get a good value guy. And Randall Grichuk was probably a keeper if he keeps this up. I like the deal for him as well. Who knows how much Charlie Morton even has left in the tank this year, next year, and beyond. He's kind of getting up there in age anyway. He's pitched a lot better since the deal, but at the time of the deal, I mean, even at 3.6 ERA, in this day and age, doesn't really seem that low. Maybe a couple years ago it would have been, but I mean, that's just kind of average at this point. All right, next trade, we have another trade involving the battling swashbucklers, say that 5 times fast, but he received Hyunjin Ryu, sent out Anthony Rendon and Casey Mize, your boy, Casey Mize, your heartthrob, your man.
Yeah.
What do you think of this one?
I don't think this was a good move for Jay, and the main reason I say that is because if you look at Ryu and Mize's numbers, show me the difference.
All right, 3.6 ERA, 77 strikeouts, 3.6 ERA, and 81 strikeouts.
And then I know Rendon's had a tough year. I get that. But at this point, do you not just bite the bullet and hope he turns it around? I mean, to give up Rendon on top of that for Ryu, who's, again, almost had an identical season as Casey Mize. I've always been a huge Rendon fan. I've always thought he's a damn good player. I don't know what's going on this year, but I'd have to anticipate this isn't the new Rendon. At least I wouldn't throw it out there yet. So I'm not even saying he's a keeper, but just to hold on to him this year to compete, I just don't. I feel like this was a very lateral, if anything, a downgrade move for Jay. As we know, he's got the pitching. He's got good pitchers. So I just don't know why he had to tack on Rendon to get. I mean, if you would have seen this trade in the beginning of the year, we would have freaked out. I mean, Rendon. I mean, it's crazy, but I don't really like it too much for Jay. That's about all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Rendon was a guy that I've been targeting for months from Jay, until finally I just kind of gave up on him because of all the injury stuff. I've been looking for an upgrade for Chapman for a while at third base, and I looked at Anthony Rendon. He got him for like $18. I forget exactly what he's got him for, but he's got him for cheap. And
I thought that was a great price at the time.
Yeah. And I was like looking post draft. I was like, damn, how do I let this one slide? And then you look at his stats and he's like, shit, this guy just hits 400 on base percentage every year and just hits 35 home runs and drives in 100 RBIs just every year.
Sure.
That's just like what he does. I guess maybe not 35 home runs every year, but 25 to 35 home runs every year with a high on base percentage and high RBIs. 126 RBIs in 2019, 92 in 2018, 100 in 2017. Last year he had 31 RBIs in 52 games. So
another 90 plus on pace.
Games, that's 90 plus RBIs again. So basically a 93 RBI pace. So, you look at that and you go, damn, like What this is just I could use a guy like this. Like this guy's pencil in for 100 RBIs, 30 home runs, and a 400 on base percentage. Who wouldn't want this guy? But yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. He's had a lot of injuries this year. He was bad before he got hurt. So yeah, I agree with you though. I really like the deal for Justin. Justin really needs some high upside bats if he's going to turn this around. His offense has been really bleak. So this is kind of the swing that he needed to make, and he's not really downgrading that much between Ryu and Casey Mize, and Casey Mize is probably going to be a 3-year keeper as well.
And if I'm Justin next year, honestly, I'm probably keeping Rendon, regardless of how he finishes out. I still think $18 is a bargain for him, and I would just hope he turns it around next year.
I probably would too. So I'll give Justin an A for this one. I'll give Jay. I still didn't mind it for Jay because I still think he filled a need, and I think he looked at his pitching staff and said, "I don't really have that many reliable guys. I kind of still have some question marks, and especially with not being sure what we're getting out of Garrett Cole the rest of the year, not really sure what you're getting out of Luis Castillo if he's going to kind of keep up his hot streak." So he gets like a guy. Hyun-Jin Ryu is just a reliable guy. So I'll give him a C plus. I don't think it was horrible for him, but yeah, I think he definitely sold too low on Rendon.
I'll give Jay a D plus, and I'll give Justin honestly an A. I think he did really good in that one.
All right, so we move down to another trade involving the Beantown boys and sliding into the DMs, Chris and Bryce, where Bryce sent out Conforto, Brandon Belt, and Matt Barnes, and Bryce got back Pete Alonso and Cesar Hernandez for this trade. I was not a big fan of this trade for Bryce. I thought that giving up Matt Barnes was really unnecessary for him in this deal. If I look at what the difference between Pete Alonso and Brandon Belt, Brandon Belt at the time before I got hurt, 11 home runs, 28 RBIs, 30 runs. Pete Alonso, who's hit I think 5 or 6 home runs since then. At the time, he was like at 11 home runs, maybe 40 RBIs. I didn't think there was like a drastic difference between those two players. But then to pile on, I think Cesar Hernandez is a 0. I didn't really think for that much of an asset. So, if you look at Brandon Belt, Pete Alonso, is Pete Alonso the better player? Yes, he is. That's not really a doubt in my mind. But is the upgrade large enough to give up Matt Barnes, who's like a top 7 closer this year, and Michael Conforto, who was the upside? He was like a top 12 hitter last year, top 12 outfielder last year anyway. If you look at his stats last year, he had 9 home runs, 31 RBIs, and a 412 on base percentage last year.
He's always been a decent OBP and good power. I mean, really.
Yeah, to give up those two guys to upgrade from Brandon Belt to Pete Alonso just seemed like way too much of an overpay. And I was not a fan of Christopher just piling on more assets.
And that's my thing too, is, I mean, obviously Alonso's early in his career, but is he going to be 2019 Alonso ever again? Or is 2020, 2021 kind of what we're expecting? Because his 2020, 2021 are kind of similar-ish stat lines. And I wonder, is Pete Alonso even better than Conforto at full health? You know what I mean? Is he? We don't know that. I mean, I think you can make an argument there. Is Conforto a better player than Alonso? I mean, obviously we know Alonso's got the name. He had that huge season, but we'll see. I mean, it really, like you said, Hernandez is kind of a wash. It was really a 3-for-1 trade there. And it was a big haul. So I think Chris did a pretty good job here.
I can tell you what Bryce was thinking, though, because he doesn't view Cesar Hernandez as his hero, because he looks at Cesar Hernandez and goes 12 homers, 35 OVRs, 52 runs scored. Oh, my God. For a second baseman, that's really good. But at the same time, that's with a 303 on base percentage and a guy whose career high is 15 home runs, who's got 14 runs. And it's not like he's approaching his prime or he's just some, guy who's.
He is what he is. Yeah.
He's 31 years old. I don't think he's magically just founded at 31 years old. This is kind of who he is. He's never really flashed this kind of thing. And I don't think he's really that much of a change player. And the irony behind it is that even with that being said, he's kind of sold out for power this year, where different from Byron Buxton, where he did power and on base percentage, he was a high average guy. He used to hit 300 as a batting average, not an on base percentage.
Yeah.
Now he's sold out for this 14 home runs, and his on base percentage has taken a huge turn. So I'm going to go ahead and give Christopher, I'll give Christopher an A+ for this. I don't think it was, I guess I'll drop it down to an A- because I think, as we'll talk about a little bit later, it leaves Christopher a little thin at first base. He's got Aguilar there, but first base is a deep enough position where you could probably do better than Aguilar and Brandon Belt. But and then I'm going to give it a D for Bryce.
I'll give it a C plus for Bryce. And really, again, it depends on if Alonso returns to 50 home run form. This probably in a couple, a year or two from now looks good for Bryce. But will he return to 50 home run form? So I'll give Bryce a C plus right now. Yeah, I'll give Chris an A minus on that one because I think getting Conforto, Barnes, that was a good haul right there.
Taylor Rogers for Josh Harrison, two guys that should probably be on the waiver wire. C's
Yeah,
all around.
nothing to say there. Yeah.
Okay. JD Davis and CJ Crone for Ryan Hoskins. So Crim's crew gave up Ryan Hoskins, took on JD Davis and CJ Crone. Maybe some building for the future going on here. I'm not exactly sure how the salaries and contracts kind of shake out for this one. But I think Ryan Hoskins is the best player in the deal. He's gotten really hot since the trade. Just kind of helping the battling swashbucklers make the run that he's been on these last couple weeks. Really like the deal for him. I'm gonna give I'll give an A minus to Jay. I'm gonna give a D plus to Krim.
This to me is really a big wait and see one because of JD Davis. I know he's been battling injuries a lot, but if you really look at that one season that he did actually be able to play a good amount, that's a really good stat line. And I'm sure Crimson, like you said, building towards the future a little bit. If JD Davis can put together similar stat lines to that, he's better than Rhys Hoskins. So I'm curious to see if that is the case, but he's just got to get on the field because that's the number one concern.
I don't think he will get on the field though, because
Yeah.
who's he gonna play over?
I don't know. I know he's got that 60-day DL, so he comes back soon. But we'll see because even the little start
to buy a third baseman at the deadline potentially.
Right. Because if we're doing that pace thing, 40 at bats in, he might be a 400 hitter. He's doing pretty good.
Yeah, but he also wasn't starting every day. He was
No.
playing every few and far between. So
we'll have to see. Yeah, I'll give it like a C.
He was also throwing balls into the first base dugout on every other ground ball too.
Yeah, not known for that. Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to Angels on the Trial Field and Tyler swinging a minor deal. Gleyber Torres going to Justin, Kepler and Tehran going to Tyler. Tehran, who pitched pretty well, I think, before he got hurt. 1.8 ERA. Oh, he pitched 5 innings this year. So he pitched well in his one start this year. And then Tyler just taking high upside swing and hopefully getting something out of Tehran when he comes back. If he comes back, then Max Kepler, and then sending back Gleyber Torres. I don't think there's a whole lot to say here. Gleyber Torres has been a disappointment. I like this trade a lot better for Tyler because I think that Kepler is even a better player than Gleyber Torres at this current time. And I think at this point he probably has. I don't know if you say he's got more upside, but I mean Kepler's got 9 home runs and 7 stolen bases. I mean I don't think that Gleyber's going to steal 7 bases this year. Oh, he's got 5. Maybe I need to take that.
This one's tough for me because if again you look at 2018, 2019 Gleyber, really good numbers. I don't know what happened in the short.
Take away his series versus the Orioles where he had 18 home runs. Then what?
Yeah.
Really is the stat line.
Yeah, exactly. And his power these last 2 years has been really striking. But I mean, this is a guy just 2 years ago where we're looking at maybe the next best shortstop in baseball. And I don't know what's happened, but I can see this going both ways. But I think there's actually a little bit more upside for Justin here if he did want to keep Gleyber. But wasn't Gleyber. I don't remember what his contract was, but it was more than I thought it should have. I don't remember what it was.
Like $28.
Yeah, that's a lot to keep. So if he was cheaper and like, hey, I'll hold on to him, see if he returns to form. But if he was that much, I just don't see Justin being able to hold on to that.
And on the other hand, Kepler is like 4.
Right. Yeah. So I could see in terms of value where we're looking at that definitely as a better return for sure.
Yeah, I think at that point Justin was just looking to shake things up a little bit. I think he had that Mondesi get hurt. Horner got hurt. He was looking for a second baseman. I'm actually going to give Justin. I'm going to give him a D here. I'm going to give Tyler a B plus.
I'll give him C's across the board. I'm curious to see how that one pans out.
All right, and we have another blockbuster. We have Jose Ramirez going to Phil along with Tyler O'Neill, and in return, sending back Donaldson, Miles Straw, and the Trevor Bauer, who did not end up on Bryce's team long term, but in this deal he was. What did you think of this one?
I thought it was interesting. Obviously, I know Bryce was coming after an ace for a long time. He was asking about Scherzer. He was asking about Woodruff. So he was really looking for that ace, and that's why kind of going back to earlier in the show, it was interesting that I know with the whole Bauer situation, but he traded that ace that he's been looking so much for. But I know Jose Ramirez was hard to pry off Bryce, and then you pair that with a really good.
Multiple times.
Yeah, well, you get a really good young player in Tyler O'Neill, who I think is a keeper. I think he's doing a really good job this year. Pretty solid. Ramirez is obviously doing pretty solid this year. You can't complain too much about his stat line. Average is a little bit lower. I I like it for both sides. Obviously it's a little retrospective because Bauer's not on that team anymore either. But Donaldson's put together a pretty decent stat line. Miles Straw, I think, is arguably startable with his 13 steals, 40 runs. If he can get a couple more playing time in there, and obviously Bauer thrown in as well, I think. This is pretty even on both sides. I thought both filled a need, both filled a hole at the time, where I couldn't really say one was like a huge upside over the other.
What would you like as a better return? I'll tell you what I offered for Jose Ramirez. I offered
Okay.
Chapman, Pablo Lopez, and Ketel Marte.
For Jose Ramirez straight
Jose
up?
Ramirez.
For
I think
just
I was
straight
Jose
up.
Ramirez and maybe like Conforto.
Oh man. I think that was a better offer. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried pretty hard to get Jose Ramirez from him. I threw in some quality pitching. I think Pablo Lopez would have been really good on his team. He eats a lot of innings, strikes out a lot of guys. But the Ketel Marte part wouldn't have helped him because he has hardly played at all since.
Yeah, but I mean still, I mean I like Katoa. I think that I think that was a better offer, but who
Well,
knows?
I would agree, but he preferred Trevor Bauer, and Trevor Bauer was probably the best player out of all those guys.
Sure.
If he was healthy and not beating his wife or girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly.
So in that one, I'm gonna give Bryce. I don't love Donaldson. He's getting old. I don't love Straw. I don't think he's even playing Straw anyway. Maybe he is. I don't know, but he's not really done a whole lot aside from steal a few bases here and there. To give up Jose Ramirez and really have nothing to show for it is tough. I'm going to give Bryce a B minus. I think it had upside. It didn't pan out the way he wanted to. Who would have foreseen Trevor Bauer going full Chris Brown on his girlfriend? But
Yeah.
for Phil, I'm going to give him a B just because I like the deal at the time for him. Obviously, getting like a top 8 player in Jose Ramirez, you always want to do that when you can. But his pitchers have experienced a lot of regression since then, and he kind of doesn't have as much pitching as he thought he did at the time of the deal.
Right, and this I think harkens back a little bit to that trade he made really early in the year when I believe he traded, was it Judge for Chapman?
Yeah.
So I think he's trying to get some offense back, but I think O'Neill Ramirez is a decent combo there where he should probably be able to keep both of those guys moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Then we have another face palm from me. We have me sending out Gio Urshela, Dylan Carlson, and Max Kepler, who then turned into Gleyber Torres for Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman played about 3 games for me before going on IL for the last 5 weeks. So I like the deal. I'm not planning on keeping Alex Bregman for what it's worth. So if you have any offers for Alex Bregman that you want to send over, go ahead. At the time, I liked it. At the time, before Bregman got hurt, I would have given myself probably an A minus. In hindsight, it's a D minus. I don't know how you want to grade this one.
I don't mind it as much for you as I think getting Bregman's a really good play, especially when he comes back so soon. You do have a lot of guys on that injured list that are going to be coming off and hopefully helping your team out soon. I don't hate it. I know you were dangling around Carlson a lot as kind of that young piece, but I mean, honestly, I think Bregman's the best player in the deal still by quite a margin. So I don't hate it as much. Urshela's done pretty well. But I mean, I'm taking Bregman over Urshela and I'm taking Bregman over Carlson. So I don't mind the deal for you. I thought it was a B plus for you and more of like a C plus for Justin.
Yeah, I think Justin, what he was looking to do is just add a few guys that he could kind of add around the edges. Just wanted to add a few trade chips so he could kind of make a few moves, and he's kind of did that. He flipped Kepler right away for Gleyber Torres, a guy that he wanted. So he's able to kind of shuffle the deck a little bit. Gio Urshela has been pretty good, just quietly, just 11 home runs, 37 RBIs, 30 runs scored, and a 272 average for the year. His on base percentage is 311, which isn't great, but it's not killing you. He's just been kind of a quality, just kind of staple. He's eligible at shortstop and third base. Didn't really want to part with him, but for Bregman, I mean, yeah. Dylan Carlson, I don't really know what's going on with him. I had high promise for him. As you know, like you said, I've been dangling him for a while. I thought he was going to have more than 7 home runs at this point. He is still hitting leadoff for the Cardinals, which is good. So he's scoring a lot of runs. He's got 45 runs scored and a high on base percentage, a 348 on base percentage. At some points this year, it was up to like 360, 370. That's come down a little bit since then. I like the piece that he got back. I thought that Kepler, Carlson, and Urshela were all keepers, and I thought they're all assets. It's not like there was any real zeros in there. So we got 3 decent guys for Bregman, a guy that he could afford to give up to kind of shake things up a little bit. I won't give a grade on that one.
All right. I'd give, go ahead.
I'm just going to move on so you can give your grade.
Oh yeah, I was gonna give you honestly like a B plus. I don't know if I even said it, B plus, and then Justin's not bad. I think like you said, got a couple quality guys back, flipped them around, so a B minus for him, I'd say.
All right, Noah Syndergaard for Teoscar Hernandez. Kind of Krim starting to shift towards the future a little early this year. He was pretty high on Syndergaard. I was looking for some pop, wanted a high RBI guy. Since then, Teoscar Hernandez hasn't really done anything since the trade. I guess he's had 3 home runs, 16 RBIs, but I think that includes the 8 RBI day that he had right before we made the trade. So if you look at his last 14 days, 1 home run, 4 RBIs. So
Right.
he hasn't really done a whole lot for me. He's been a disappointment. I like the deal just because I'm all in for this year. I really needed add some pop to my lineup, although he has not provided it. Still pretty high on him. I'll give myself a B for it, and I'll give Krim a B as well.
Yeah, I mean, clear move here. You're looking to get a piece for this year. Krim was seeing, hey, Syndergaard at that price, keeper, get him for next year. I think it was a great move, honestly, for Krim. And obviously, you need a little extra bat. And honestly, if you looked at Teoscar's 2020 shortened season, there was a little bit maybe okay, is he turning it around a little bit because he's always had that power, but the OBP's never been there, the average has never been there. And then he started off 2020 really, he had a great 2021 he started off really good. We'll see if he can keep that up. So if he can keep going with the line he has, I think that's a great move for you as well. I'll give a kind of a B for both as well, because if Syndergaard returns to Syndergaard form next year, this trade is going to be really interesting when we look at it next year.
All right, we're running a little slow here, so we need to maybe pick things up a little bit. Byron Reynolds for Frankie Montas. Frankie Montas was really streaky, pitched really well the other night. But other than that, I don't think he's that much. I think he's kind of a jag.
Right.
Byron Reynolds.
Now we got the 2 big blockbusters here.
Yeah, we got Brian Reynolds actually played really well. And so I think Jay probably comes out ahead on this one based on what those players have done since then. But I guess I'll give Jay an A minus, and I'll give David a C plus.
Yeah, and I think yeah, Jay's the clear winner here, and I was very surprised because Dave is a Pirates. I know they're both Pirates fan, but
Dave's kind of strange.
Yeah, Dave's a Pirates fan. Reynolds is having an absolutely amazing season, and he just was like, "Hey, here you go." So I don't know. That was an interesting move.
All right, you took on Scherzer from David. Oh no, you traded away Scherzer. Excuse me. And you took back Jose Barrios for Edwin Diaz. What's your thoughts here?
I looked at it as I was in desperate need of saves, obviously, and he did not want to give up Brios. We were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I said, the only way I am giving up Max Scherzer, I need a pitcher back. And Max Scherzer is better than Brios. There's no question about that, but I need a solid pitcher back or else I'll be in trouble. So I kept it waiting. Finally, he budged. I think I did a really good job in this one. I know Scherzer is going to be a keeper next year. He's been fantastic this year. The Ks are there. Everything's there. But to get Barrios, who I've always been a huge fan of, and if you really look at his career numbers, has pitched pretty good in his career.
Very consistent.
Yeah, and to get a I would argue top 10 closer back that I will keep next year because I need a closer for next year, and then I don't even have to really worry about the position next year. So I feel like I got a number 1-2 pitcher. I got a top 10 closer. Had to give up a lot, but I think it worked. It worked out for me, I think.
What I liked about it for you is I like how it increased your roster flexibility. I think that you could afford to kind of give up Scherzer at that point. And when I look at your roster as a whole, I kind of like what it turned into because you're leading the league in wins, quality starts right now. So it allowed you to kind of play a 3 closer lineup now that you've picked up Jake McGee and he's kind of been really well for you. And it kind of really increased what your kind of upside was when it comes to your roster flexibility. Not that it increased your upside because, I mean, the best player in the deal is Scherzer, but to get Diaz back, he's, you know, as you said, he's been a top 5 closer this year. I like the deal for you. Like the deal for both sides. I'll give each side an A.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. The biggest blockbuster we've had this year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even really call this the biggest blockbuster because I feel like Tatis and Trout kind of almost just cancel each other out. So I don't even know if you really want to call this like that. I mean, it is a blockbuster, but is it really? Because really, isn't it just more like, you know, Chris Sale and Eloy heading over to Tyler in a win now move? What do you think about this one?
Obviously I was getting conversations from both. I told Krim that was I said I think you should try to go after Tyler's guys on the injured list. And I know Tyler was asking me a little bit what he thought. I think it's a good move for both sides. And really a lot of it comes down to, is Trout going to stay healthy for the next years? Because he's been battling a few injuries lately. But honestly, Krim's going to have Jimenez, Sale, Trout, a couple other guys. Syndergaard. I mean,
Oh,
this
yes,
is
yeah,
shaping
Syndergaard.
up to be, and yeah, we'll talk about that more when we get to his team. But I really like this move for Krim because you're right. It's Tatis and Trout are darn near a wash, but I can also see where Tyler wanted to make this move too because he's not out of it. Tyler can make the playoffs, the head-to-head playoffs easily. Now Roto, that'd be a stretch, but in terms of playoffs and head-to-head, Tyler's still very much into that. And this trade was made almost a month ago, and Trout's not back yet. So I can 100% see why Tyler
Tatis
also made
is
this
on
move.
pace to hit 50 home runs and steal 40 bases.
I mean, exactly. And that's something I would argue over the next 3 years. Tatis, if they're both on the field 150 games, Tatis is a better fantasy player than Trout,
I would agree.
specifically for stolen bases, because Trout doesn't steal anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just that Tatis steals bases. It's Tatis steals a ton of bases.
Sure.
Is he leading the league with 20?
I think he's got to be. I mean, he's if he really ramps up those steals, he could be maybe 40-40. He really have to ramp up the steals, but he could very well make it.
Keep talking while I look this up.
No, yeah, for sure. But no, I think, like I said, I think Tatis, if you really look at it over the next 3 years, is a better fantasy player because if you're throwing in that steal category, that's the one thing Tatis is going to do over Trout. And that's not to say Trout's not going to still get, 15-ish steals a year, but he's not the 49 steals he was in his rookie season. So if they both stay healthy, good. But I mean, Krim piling on Chris Sale, piling on Eloy Jimenez. I told Krim when he made this deal, I'm like, he's like, well, do you think Sale's going to return to Cy Young form? I said, I don't even know if it matters. If he's a 3.5 ERA pitcher, but
Yeah.
he's still that huge K guy that he was, this is a guy that had 300 Ks. I mean,
Yeah.
250 Ks. I mean, if he has Sale and Syndergaard for $14 combined, I think it is, that's mind-boggling heading into next year.
Yeah, it's definitely high upside. We don't know if he's going to be what he was before Tommy John. Odds are he won't be. But I mean, it's tough because before he got hurt, he had a 4.4 ERA, Chris Sale. But as you said, 218 strikeouts that year in 150 innings.
I mean, you're taking that, right? Yeah.
The strikeout. So you'll kind of give the ERA a little bit because his whip was his 1.08 whip. The whip helps you, but the ERA, yeah, pretty high. But yeah, with the strikeouts and the wins that he'll get playing for the Red Sox, you'll definitely take that. Definitely high upside there. I'll give each team an A. I liked it for both. Yeah, Krim got 3 very good keepers and assets, and Trout, Eloy, and Sale. I don't know if I'd keep Eloy just because I think shoulder injuries really take a.
I'd keep him.
I think they take a toll on a guy. I don't think that Eloy is going to be the same guy he was before he got hurt, to be honest. But luckily we'll be able to see what kind of player he is before the end of the year. And then Tatis, best player in the deal. I think, yeah, as you said, Tatis is a clear upgrade over Trout at this point. The dude's an absolute stud. 28 homers, 60 RBI, 7 runs scored, 20 stolen bases. He's 4 stolen bases behind Whit Merrifield. There is a chance, it is a realistic possibility that Fernando Tatis leads the league in home runs, RBIs, runs, and stolen bases. That is in the realm of possibilities.
100%. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I liked it for each. Then last, I think this was I think we had this one, but that is it. The Hendricks, Paddock, Mackenzie Gore trade looks even worse for Bryce now that Hendricks is pitching as well as he is.
Yeah.
I think Bryce has traded himself out of contention in this league because he's had some good guys on his roster and he's
certainly
many of them.
All right.
Oh man, so we are out of breath after analyzing all the trades. I love all the movement. I love all the trades. I love all the banter, even though this morning was stressful. I do love kind of the banter that goes along.
It's fun. It's all good fun.
I'd rather have what we have than have guys not care and be indifferent about it. So as we move on from that, we're going to analyze where we were last month, and take a look at who the biggest movers have been in the standings so far. So let me pull up the standings here. As we sit right now, as we look at like the kind of combined standings, we would have Chris and Phil getting first round buys. Remember that the team in each division, the winner of each division will get a first round bye. Then the next 4 teams after that, regardless of division, will make the playoffs. So that would be Just a Blah team, Peter, myself, and the Beantown boys at this current juncture.
Holding.
Yeah, still holding the fort down. Got a, what was it? How many? He's half a game up on Chad. So he's 17 games back and Chad is 17 and a half games back. So we'll see if that can continue. And Ronald Acuna was just carted off the field.
Oh my. How are you feeling now? Oh my,
Wow.
that is
And
not good.
and Justin is calling me right now to tell me about it.
Oh my God. Bellinger for Bregman and what?
Fuck. This shit sucks. I am so over these fucking injuries. All right.
That's nuts.
So that's where we stand for that. I'm gonna be in a shitty mood the rest of the podcast now. Here's where our season standings are for Roto. We
Kind of
have
interesting that there's like a 7, and then there's like a little bit of a dip, and then the other 7.
yeah,
It was kind of interesting. And me and you've been swapping 7th and 6th all week. I've
have
noticed.
we
Like there was a
really?
time I was like up to 83. You were down to 78. We've
Is
been
it
kind of
that bad?
swapping back and forth. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been making a little bit of a climb here, but
Things are looking bleak
yeah.
for the Burns when I PV squad. Is that karma? Is that a karma injury that I'm sensing here? But yeah, so here's where we're at. Biggest risers and fallers. Who do you think has been the biggest surprise since the last time we did the podcast?
I think I know. I picked Jay to win the whole thing. So seeing Jay actually able to like be up there in the standings and showing his team's worthwhile. I know you picked Peter, and there's our two guys right there, duking it out, right next to each other in terms of Peter and Jay. Jay's team's really shaping up. I mean, I always tend to look at when I look at the Roto standings, I look how many categories are you elite in, and it's kind of my own way of doing it. But I feel like if you're a top 3 in a category, you're elite in that category, and Jay is elite in 3, 4, almost 5 categories. He's 12, 12, 14, 14, 11 on the offensive side. If he can make a move for a pitcher, if he can get an ace pitcher to start climbing up that ERA, that whip, those Ks, those quality starts, I mean, Jay's got 91 points. How many of that is from hitting? I mean, I could scroll down real quick.
Uh,
63 points. 63 points come from hitting. That would beat 4 complete teams in the league. He could not even have pitching, and he would be in 11th place right now. So if he can get
is it?
any pitching at all,
But he just
that would be
traded for
great.
Charlie Morton and Hyun-Jin Ryu. That's why
Right.
he did.
Exactly. And that's why I think when you look at those moves, I think Jay um can still very much be a contender right now because those moves he made, he's getting pitching, his offense is there. I really like the way Jay's team's shaping up.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Jay's been the biggest riser. Last time we did the podcast, he was in 8th. Now he's up to 4th. Some other risers, Phil kind of took a dive there for a few weeks. He's back up into 3rd in the Roto standings. He was down to 6th last time. And Dave from 3rd up into 2nd. Just a blah team, kind of putting his hat in the ring there as a contender. Biggest disappointment, myself, was in 4th last time. Now I am down to 6th and reeling. Guys continue to get hurt. My studs just keep getting carted off the field. I am running out of hospital beds on my roster. Chad dropping down from 7th to 9th in the Roto standings has not looked too good for him. He's kind of down in the purgatory there, kind of juggling between Bryce and Tyler down there. And then Bryce as well. He was in 5th last time we did the podcast. Now he's down into 8th. Any surprises there for you?
Chad just continues, the wheels just continue to fall for Chad. I mean, that's a guy that was really looking like, hey, he's got a couple good pitchers, he's got the power, he's sitting up there at the top. But again, 162 game season, he just has been in a free fall the last about month and a half, and it's not good to see. And I think Bryce, like you said earlier, I think he's just shooting himself in the foot with the trades. And like you said, run the team how you want, but obviously when you're offering trades, you feel like your offer might be better than someone else's, but man, I sometimes wonder like where he thinks or values certain players, because I think he's had some opportunities to make some moves, and it seems like almost every bright move Bryce has made trade wise is kind of in a sense backfired.
Yeah, it really has not gone well for him. But it's wild to see that Chad's team has John Means, Tyler Glasnow, Aaron Nola, and Lucas Giolito, and he is second to last in ERA.
Well, my thing is too, and I said this at the beginning of the year when we did that draft preview show, I said Chad spent money on pitchers, but I don't like the pitchers he spent money on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge Giolito guy. I'm not a huge Nola guy. I'm not. I mean, he spent money on these guys, and they're turning into 4 ERA pitchers, which is kind of what I thought they'd be. So I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I would have to agree. So we're gonna do team by teams kind of power rankings as we kind of go through each. And kind of as we do that, before we do that, let's take a quick look at the waiver wire additions. Is there anything that has popped out to you as anyone that's kind of added in the last month that you think is going to make a really big impact?
It's kind of getting to that point. I'm not saying it's completely dry. Obviously, you can always find guys that can be worthwhile, but it's getting to that point where it's tough, especially this, which I kind of enjoy, this 14 team league. There isn't just guys available ready to go at any moment's notice, but it's been pretty dry out there. I haven't seen anything in particular, so you take it away if you've seen one.
Yeah, so there's a couple names, starting from kind of furthest away to added the closest. Stripling was added about a month ago. He's been pretty good this last month. Of course, he got lit up today right after I traded him to Bryce. Ironically, another trade for Bryce. He traded me Willie Adonis. Jake Fraley has been really good for Tyler. He's on like a 35-35 pace right now. He's got 7 homers, 7 stolen bases, but he's only got like 100 at bats. So over like a 500 at bat season, he had 35 pace, and he's got like a 450 on base percentage. He's been crazy good. Bobby
Really
Bradley,
good.
I added as well. He has hit, I think, 10 or 11 home runs. He just came in my lineup this week. I think he's got 2 or 3 homers this week. Power hitter, basically power only for Cleveland. John Gray was added by Jay, then dropped by Jay, and now Krim has him. He's been very good, ironically, at home in Colorado. And bad on the road. So I don't know. He'll probably be on the move come the trade deadline. We'll see what team he ends up with. But if he ends up with a team that can teach him how to use sticky stuff without getting caught, or it's like a team like Oakland who's got a pitcher-friendly ballpark, it could be really good for him. Luis Urias from Chris, he's had him in his lineup. He's played really well. And then Justin the other day added Eric Haas. I don't know his name. He's catcher eligible. He's been playing a lot of outfield. I really like him. He's got like 7 home runs in his last 5 games, or other way around, 5 home runs in his last like 7 games. Been really well for him. Any of these guys, I don't think they're gonna make a huge impact. Maybe Jake Fraley, probably more than anybody, but other than that, pretty minimal.
Yep.
All right, so at this point, we will jump into our power rankings,
Let's do it.
and we will start with our bottom team. No surprise that this is going to be Eddie Mazur's team. Eddie Mazur, you've been kind of waiting for him, see if he could make a run. Team Pablo Sanchez, it just hasn't really happened for him. And as we're seeing now, he's kind of going into sell mode. He's kind of building for 2022. He's battled some injuries, Madrigal, Moustakis, Kluber, Soroka, although those guys you kind of expected weren't really going to be major contributors. He's had some guys that have played well, but he just hasn't had enough guys that have played well. David Fletcher, 1 home run, 28 RBIs, has been a staple in his lineup. Mountcastle's been okay. McNeil's been hurt. Muncie's been good. Votto's been okay. And the pitching's been just not good. He hasn't kind of pushed the right buttons this year. He's had some good guys that he's added off waiver wires. Things just somehow just never really came together for him. So what do you think about Eddie's team?
I think Eddie, looking for next year, because obviously he's not in it this year, but I think he needs to start asking teams like a guy like Avado, at 11 home runs, 39 RBIs, 340, someone that just needs a little offensive spark. Another one that's interesting is, I know not a lot of people are going to be like loving the taking on the $36 salary, but just because you take on the salary doesn't mean you have to keep them. And if someone really wants to go out there and get some
And we
offense,
have some wiggle room built into there where that's why I kind of put the salary cap. The salary
right,
cap is 320. So you
right,
can add up to 320 and have that in your lineup at any point this year.
100%.
And you
And
only drafted 260. So, and that not 260 doesn't even go all in your lineup. So you think your baseline is probably like 240. So at any point throughout the year, you can add up to $80 in salary.
And that's what I'm getting at. I think everyone's looking at like, I need to trade for keepers, and that's why I think your trade earlier was like, that was one of the first big moves you saw where like, no, I'm not trading for keepers. I'm trading for guys that are going to help this year. Why doesn't someone go after a Trevor Story? I don't think Eddie would be, I don't know, I want to say not wise, but $36 is kind of a tough call right now for the season he's doing. I mean, obviously the 17 steals, it's not bad, but why not go after a Trevor Story at $36, a team that needs some offense that can get a little spark? If you keep him, you keep him. If you don't, you don't. But like, if you want to compete and win this year and you're one of those teams that's, top 5 in roto right now and you're slacking a little bit on offense, what is the price of a Trevor Story? Or what is the price of a Jonathan Shoup? Jonathan Shoup's having a great year.
Yeah.
OBP not great, but 16 home runs, 50 RBIs, 45 runs. Those are, I think, Shoup, Story, Votto, stuff like that could be guys that could just give a little spark to a team, and maybe he can get a keeper or two back.
Yeah, the chat's blowing up right now. People are kind of sending out the search dogs to make sure I'm okay.
Oh God.
But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think he could still get some assets for Scope and some of these guys. Scope's been really good. I think the irony is that I think people have tried to get Trevor Story and have been unsuccessful. I think Eddie's probably got about 20 offers in his inbox
Oh
right now.
wow.
Trevor Story. I think I'm exaggerating, but I think people have tried to get him. I know Justin's tried to get him. Let me ask you this: who would be better rest of season, Jesse Winker or Trevor Story?
I mean, Story's giving you the steals too.
Because I think
It,
that would be a trade that would make a lot of sense. Like, hey,
yeah.
Tyler, Tyler's really trying to make a run, adding a better player in Trevor Story, and then giving up a $1 value in a guy like Jesse Winker.
And I think that's the tough part is Winker's $1, and I think Tyler could really use that to his advantage. I don't know. And that's what makes it tough. But
But
I
that's
see where you're going with
the
it. Like the
kind of
proven,
trade, that we could see out of that would make sense for
sure,
both teams.
I
Or
agree.
even like to throw in, Tyler wouldn't really have to throw in much, but a guy like a $4 Max Kepler, where Eddie's going to fill more roster spots, give himself some more keepers, and he's going
And
to give
Tyler could easily fill
30,
that salary.
30 more dollars to spend in next year's auction to kind of fill some pitching spots in as
Sure.
well. Going into next year, I don't think that Eddie's team is barren. I think he definitely needs to add some more keepers. I don't think he has many, but keep in mind he's probably going to keep Story. He's probably going to keep Mountcastle for 4. I don't think he's going to keep McNeil, but Jordan Alvarez for 24 is for sure a keeper.
I think Will Smith is a possible keeper. I know he's a catcher, but I don't know if I see 12 names on there. I do see a lot of prospects.
Yeah,
But
Max Muncy for 19. He's played really well. 18 homers, 51 runs
keeper.
scored, a 412 on base percentage. Bobby Witt, he'll probably keep. Not a lot of pitchers he'll keep, but remember he's going to be adding Gallen and Byron Buxton to his keeper
Brad
list
Hand, he
as
will
well.
keep.
He cannot keep him because Brad Hand is not on his roster. Anyway, but he can get Brad Hand next year, probably again for $12 if he wants.
There you go.
So yeah, I think he could still use a little bit of help there, but I don't think it's a barren core. I think he's got plenty of upside with some of the guys that he's got. And
Kluber might be a keeper. He
he's
pitched well
definitely
before he got
the
hurt.
money to spend next year to kind of rearrange some things.
Certainly.
All right, so that was number 14. Number 12 on our power rankings is going to be David Luzak Wamboltz. His team is COVID free. His team has just kind of been he's kind of been in the middle of a lake without a sail. I forget what the saying is, but it's kind of rudderless at this point. He's not really sure what direction he's going. I'm not really sure what he's been doing with some of his lineup decisions. He's got McCullers on his bench. He's had a Rosa Reyna on his bench at some point. Eduardo Escobar's got 20 home runs on his bench. His lineup decisions are always very questionable. And so not really sure what that. Before we move on to that, we forgot to do our newest segment. What was your one big question for Eddie's team?
Eddie's team was what were you thinking? But what were you thinking? But that goes back to the early trade. But no, it was kind of going off what I said was, what does 2022 look like? Because he really is, you can say for certain, he is the one team that's kind of for sure out of it. So it's basically kind of what we were going off, what 2022 looks like.
Yeah, my one big question for Eddie would just be, what can you get for Trevor Story and Jonathan Scope? I think those are your two assets that you really need to move at this point. Not that you need to move Story, but I think that you can to kind of get some savings, get some better assets, maybe some pitching
right.
going into next year. I think would be a good thing for him. All right, so we move on to David's team. Like I said, not really sure what's going on here, what his real plan is. In the rankings, he is down to 13th in Roto, 12th in head-to-head, so he's kind of hanging on for dear life. I think that he should probably be a seller at the deadline. I don't really see a clear path on how he gets back to relevance. Do you see anything like that?
No, and this is a guy that didn't use a lot of his budget early, and I don't see a whole lot of keepers on here. Chisholm's a keeper. Mancada's probably a keeper.
He's not played well the last month.
No, not at all. But guys like Soler at 15, he's not being kept. I don't even know if a guy like Verdugo at 14, that's probably fringe keeper. I like Verdugo, but I mean, you could maybe get him for cheaper. And obviously the pitching just isn't there. So Urias is probably a keeper for the Dodgers. He's pitched well for him. But again, it's kind of a looking at 2022 thing. But the crazy thing is a couple good weeks. I mean, it's not like his head-to-head record's bad because he's 5 games out of a playoff spot. So it's one of those things where it's like, man, if he could have a couple good weeks, he's right there. But at the same time, he could sell. So
Yeah, you're right. He's only 5 games back of being in a playoff spot. So, anything can happen. Anyone can have a good week. Anyone can pop off. I mean, you can make 5 games up in 1 week for sure,
Certainly.
especially if you place a person that's ahead of you in the standings. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say here. What's your one big question for David's team?
Just basically who's available and when are they available? Because I think he's at that kind of crux mark of, okay, could I make a playoff spot? Sure. Is it realistic? Maybe not. So basically the question is over the next few weeks when the deadline does happen is when is sell mode and how fast do you want to make that happen? Because I'm really curious to see how the league will play out the next month in terms of like, okay, when are teams going to say I am selling? You know what I mean?
What does he have to sell?
It's tough because I think again an Araz Arena. I don't know if he's a keeper at $22, but could he be given somewhere? I it, yeah, there's not a whole lot there like you said, but you could maybe find something. I don't know. You got to look hard, but
Yeah. So that's gonna be tough. Maybe some of his higher
I
salary.
think Hader again. I think $23 is insane amount for a closer. He doesn't need a closer right now. Someone could take on that salary this year.
Yeah.
And that's not saying he hasn't been amazing, right? I mean, but $23 is a steep price to play. You can argue that it's been worth it with the performance he's had, but
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need Hader if he's going to sell. So why not trade him, shed even more salary, and what can I get for the best closer in the game?
Yeah, exactly. All right. My one big question is how much are you willing to shake things up? Because I'm just not sure what your direction is here with this team. If you're going to be a buyer, if you're going to be a seller, but I think something needs to happen with this team. I just don't know what it is. We'll move on to our 12th. So that was 14, 13, our 12th ranked team in the power rankings. And you have us to put Jordan Crimmy in this spot. Crimmy
Yeah.
down into 12th. Do you think that Crimmy is dead in the water? He should be selling. Tell me why.
Yeah, I think, and I think he's pretty much said that at this point. The moves he's making, could he have really competed for a playoff spot? Sure, but he's a little bit of a tier below those kind of middle ground teams of that head to head. He's about 7 games even behind that. I told you pre-show, I think Crimson's team next year has a ton of potential. When you look at a lot of the guys he could keep, really, he's not really losing.
Keep Trout and Soto.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I also think in terms of, uh, like he's not losing many C players. Falefa from Texas is about it, but I think his team next year, because he can manage to keep those players because he's got Sale at $6, Syndergaard at $9. That Christian Javier's pitched really good at $6.
If he
Nate
makes it back
Pierce,
to the rotation.
yeah, if he gets back in the rotation, Pearson and Liberatoria prospects are probably getting kept. He can easily keep those high priced players. I think even a Kershaw is probably kept at $27. Taiwan Walker's kept at $5. Alex Reyes is an easy keeper at $4. So I think everyone in his rotation right now, Musgrove, Kershaw, Walker, Reyes are keepers. Those guys that are injured are keepers. I know you can have 12, but he's right around there. Nimmo at $1. When he comes back, he might be a keeper. I know he's already looking towards 2022, but he's a team to watch out for in 2022.
Yeah. I like the PCS. Obviously, if you're kind of starting out the year and you have, Soto and Trout, you're going to be in contention probably no matter what, as long as both those guys can stay healthy. He's not going to have a lot of salary to spend in the auction next year, keeping, basically $100 in salary and just 2 players, that's,
It's a lot.
16 other roster spots you have to fill or whatever it may be. So it's quite a bit. But we'll see kind of what he can do, how he can build around it, and kind of what happens there. My one big question for Crimmy is how long can you wait? How patient can you be for the reinforcements? I would disagree in the fact that I don't think that Crimmy is out. I just think that he just needs to be as patient as he can be. I don't know if he needs to really make a drastic move, but if he can just maybe just play 500 ball, and then maybe in 2 weeks he gets Trout back, and maybe in 1.5 weeks after the All-Star break he gets Eloy back, and then maybe Chris Sale comes back in about 3 weeks. Maybe Noah Syndergaard starts to throw again. I mean, is there a scenario where his team can just weather the storm for a little bit, and then the last 2 weeks of the season he can kind of go on a tear once he's at full strength? I mean, these guys that he has on his roster aren't out all year. So I mean, he is going to get them back hopefully at some point. If his team can just play well enough to maybe weather the storm for just a couple more weeks, and maybe in those last 2-3 weeks before playoffs start, he can maybe make a small chance. But there's a very small margin for error, and the
Yeah.
window is closing quickly.
You can argue real quick that his two worst players in his lineup are Alec Baum, who if JD Davis comes back, filled, and maybe a Kevin Biggio
Oh,
is
Tony
the
Kemp.
other. Yeah, is the other one maybe, and then guess who he gets replaced by? A Trout or a Eloy coming back. So his lineup, like you said, when those reinforcements arrive, does not look bad.
Maybe Torkelson gets called up too. That'd be a
Sure.
pretty big help for him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he waited way too long to sell Kiner Falefa too, though. He's been really bad over the last month, and
Yeah.
I don't think he has much trade value anymore. He's got 15 stolen bases. Maybe someone will look at the 15 stolen bases and go, "Oh, that's kind of what he is." But if you look at when those stolen bases happened, we pull up his game log here. He has had his last stolen base came on June 13th, a month
Almost a
ago.
month. Yeah.
So he has had 0 stolen bases in the last like 27 days. So yeah, I think he waited way too long. I know I was very heavily interested in him, but we never were able to swing a deal. All right, so that brings us up to number 11 in our power rankings, and that is going to be Tyler. Now, I'm a little higher on Tyler's roster than you, just because whenever you're led by the best player in baseball, Fernando Tatis, I mean, things look pretty good for you. He's got some good bats. He's got a lot of guys that I like, and I think that even his bench, he's got some decent players in Wisdom and Kepler and some guys that he can kind of plug and chug there. He's got some questions in his rotation. He definitely has some holes there. A bit Wheeler kind of leads it. He's got some arms. I mean, between Wheeler, Stroman, and Caprillion, all guys that have sub-3 ERAs, not sub-4 ERAs, sub-3 ERAs. Flexen's pitched well for him, and Alex Wood has been okay. Not great, but he's kind of shown a little bit of weakness here. I don't hate his rotation. I think it's probably middle of the pack, and he's got some pop in his lineup. Fraley's kind of providing some good things for him. Marte, since he's been back, has played well, 16 stolen bases on the year. I like a lot of the guys that he has, and I think this is a team to kind of look out for. I think he's probably my biggest sleeper. I think nobody's really given him credit as being a guy that can kind of really sneak into the playoffs and do some damage. But what do you think?
I I think Tyler's got some potential here. Obviously, he's not out of the playoff thing at all. Like you said, Fraley's been absolutely amazing. But again, he's going to be at that point, kind of like I'm talking about with these other teams, where okay, a week or two from now, if it's not hitting, if I don't go 7-3 or 8-2 in these next 2 weeks, do I start selling guys like a Fraley? Do I start selling guys? Look at James Caprilin from Oakland and what he's done this year: 62
Yeah.
innings, 66 Ks, 2.9 ERA. These are guys that are either going to help him get into the playoffs, or in a couple weeks, these are going to be guys where he can really start loading up again for next year and start getting some guys, because we've obviously seen him make that move. I don't know if Goldschmidt's a keeper at $31 heading into next year. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if I don't know if I'm paying a catcher $20 in Real Muto either. So is he on the market come soon? Those are questions to be had. But like you said, standings wise, there's a really big cluster between teams like 7 through 12, and these next couple weeks are going to provide a lot of answers.
Yeah, I think that he really needs to trade Goldschmidt. I think he's kind of in the same position as almost a Trevor Story, where Trevor Story would be a keeper for that money, but I don't think that Goldschmidt's a keeper for 31. And I think
No.
there's teams out there that would still kind of give up an asset for Goldschmidt, maybe a keeper, or maybe just somebody you can kind of roll the dice on. That maybe is keeper, maybe it's not. But I don't think that there's any scenario where Goldschmidt should be kept for 31. I think that's a piece that he can definitely give up. So your one big question then was, what does he do with Caprillion and Fraley?
Yeah, and I think those are again really big answers that could be had in the next 2 weeks. Because if Tyler's in the playoff hunt, he's probably riding the ship and saying, well, let's see what this thing can do. But if he has a 3-7 week or a 4-6 week kind of back to back, the playoff we're a month away from the playoffs. We're about a month, a little bit more than a month away from the playoffs in terms of head to head. I know people might be looking at Roto all the way till October, and that's totally fine as well. But if he's really looking at that head to head, making a playoff push, if he isn't going to be in it, those could be really big trade ships here in the next couple of weeks, certainly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I still see a scenario where Tyler can be a buyer at the deadline. I don't think he's ready to blow things up yet. And I think just 1 or 2 good weeks, give him a little bit of momentum, give him a little up down. But yeah, he could be probably our biggest kind of factor at the deadline. He could be a buyer, he could be a seller. His players have the potential to kind of really shake things up towards the deadline for one way or another, whether he's a buyer or whether he's a seller. I know he's
Certainly.
close with Eddie, so maybe Tyler can add a Trevor Story without giving up a Winker. So maybe we'll have to see what kind of happens there. All right. Next, we have in 10th place in our power rankings, we both have Bryce at 10th. Now, Bryce was up for a while. He was up there in a 6th place. And he looked like he was kind of pitching well. His offense was carrying him. So what did he do? He traded away his really good offensive players. He traded away Donaldson. He traded away Conforto. He doesn't have a whole lot left. Yeah, his moves have really kind of done him in big time. There's not a whole lot here that really shows me that he's got a whole lot of promise. Now that I'm thinking about it, if I could go back, I would probably put Bryce below Tyler in the power rankings. I kind of brushed through it really quickly. I like some of the trades that he's gotten because he made the mistake early of trading away his starting pitching, and then he had to play catch up to kind of trade it back. I don't mind some of the pitchers that he's kind of taken on. He's got Carrasco, Savale, Stripling, Paddock, Manoa, Manaya are guys that he's all kind of taken on. And all those guys can be something. They can all kind of give him what he needs. But I think he's kind of pretty deep in the hole at this point. And what he needed was he needed to improve the pitching without breaking up his top offense. But he doesn't have a top offense anymore. He's starting Ahmed Rosario in the outfield, Randall Grichuk, Miles Straw. I mean, he's really taken a turn in home runs, RBIs, and I don't think he can recover from it anymore.
No, I don't think so either. And it's one of those things too. Like, I mean, you look at his lineup and his OBP, he's only got like a couple guys. I mean, over that 3 kind of decent OBP mark. I mean, he's losing out on a lot of power. He doesn't have a guy with, 20 home runs on the team right now. It's tough because I think he's in a middle ground where, again, could compete, might not. But at this point, I would focus more on the selling aspect from Bryce's end. I'm not saying he can't bounce back and do that, but he does have some nice pieces he could build around, especially having Mackenzie Gore, who knows when he plays. But again, like that Alek Manoah move, if that was an A player, props off to you. But the fact he's a C, he better contribute this year or else. I'm sure he's waiting for Carrasco to come back, for Matthew Boyd to come back. Boyd's actually had pretty good year, which is definitely not what his career indicates. So maybe again, he's kind of right in the ship for the next 2 weeks to kind of see what happens. But I kind of agree with you in the same sense that Tyler's team, kind of looking at it more, looks a little bit better and more positioned to win this year than Bryce's does.
Yeah, sometimes we gotta talk things out. Sometimes things
Yeah,
aren't what they seem.
sure.
So my one big question for Bryce would have been how far can his offense carry him? Because he had a team at the beginning that was just heavily stacked in offense, and his pitching, he was trying to just go for ERA and WHIP, win those categories, and then just kind of let his offense carry him. His offense isn't what it used to be. And so it's just a matter of how far can that really carry him. I don't think he even has a top offense. I don't even know if he has a top 5 offense anymore. So I don't know if it's going to be able to carry him into the postseason like I thought it would have before.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
All right. So we are going to. Oh, what's that? Yeah. All right, coming in at number 9, we have Angels in the Trout Field. That is Justin's team. Justin's team has been kind of weird this year where I look at his offense and I'm like, I'm just waiting for some of these guys to turn it on. These LeMahieu's, these Aaron Judges, these Lindors. And now that these guys kind of have started turning things on, Lindor's turning things around, LeMahieu's turning things around a little bit, not much. Judge has been okay. At least he's been healthy, but he's 46 runs scored and 47 RBIs. The counting stats aren't really there. I don't really know how to feel about this offense. His pitching has carried him quite a bit this year. Maybe once he gets Shane Bieber back, he's still got some pitching categories he can kind of make up on, and maybe his offense just continues to improve. But what do you think about Justin's team?
Yeah, Judge has been probably his best offensive player to this point. 20 home runs, 46 RBIs, almost a 380 on base percentage. I'm curious to see if he can continue to compete. Obviously, Rendon's hurt. Ozuna's probably not coming back. Who knows what that situation is. Pitching wise, Lynn and Gosman have just been absolutely amazing. And if he can hold fort with guys like Mize, Pavetta, Luis Garcia has been pretty good for him as well. I think Justin has a chance if that pitching holds. If that pitching holds, I still think he needs to make a move. for some offense. But again, is that Rendon coming back in 6 days? It might be. That could be that little charge. So if Rendon's Rendon, Justin can see himself right in the thick of this head-to-head playoff picture. My one question for him, obviously, me always looking at what kind of guys they can get value out of. Akil Badu is another guy that's kind of bringing that season back a little bit. He got off to that hot start, struggled, kind of heating up a little bit more again. 13 steals,
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. 350 OBP. Again, it's one of those questions. If Justin does start struggling, look at Jonathan India's season so far. Not a huge home run guy, not a huge RBI guy, but 7 steals. If someone's looking for a little bit of OBP, a little bit of runs, those are 2 C players that
Things have
Justin could.
really changed for him since he got moved to the leadoff spot.
Yeah.
Over like last 30 days, he's got 21 runs scored, home run, 10 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, but a 433 on base percentage over his last 30 days, a 456 on base percentage over his last 14 days. Been really swinging a hot bat. He's scoring a bunch of runs in that offense. Yeah, I was eyeing India, and then he snagged him up right before I could because I couldn't figure out who I wanted to drop. I'm really regretting that. I really could have used him. His offense would have been a nice jolt for me. Yeah, he's going to make an interesting one. He's got some pieces here. Are India and Badu going to be available? Is McClanahan going to be available if things kind of take a turn for Justin? But I don't think by any means is Justin out as well. My one big question for Justin is, what is he getting out of the Yankees in the second half? Are the Yankees going to kind of add someone to kind of really, enhance their lineup where his guys Glaber and Urshela and LeMahieu and Judge, he's got 4 Yankees in his lineup. If they could get, if they can continue to get on base, if one goes, they all go, sort of mentality where his players are driving in his players and their offense gets hot. I mean, if the Yankees rattle off, 15 wins in 20 games and their offense kind of lights it up, you're going to see his team is going to improve a lot better because how could it not? He's got so many of those pieces. I think they could. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and name-wise, I mean, you got guys like you said, Lindor, that's not performed up to expectations. Torres has not performed to expectations. LeMahieu has nowhere near performed to expectations. I mean, the 347 OBP might look good for some. That's not his status quo. And then again, Rendon. So if, like you said, if these guys can actually start playing how they're supposed to play over the next month, Justin is very much in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And but the thing is like he's got 2 guys on his team that have more than 12 home runs or 12 home runs before. I don't count Eric Haas because just added him off waivers. He hasn't even seen his lineup yet. So yeah, there's definitely some holes there. He definitely needs to his guys need to turn it around. I think they can. Will they? I don't know. So that was my one big question. He's holding on to 9th in our power rankings. Not out. A team to watch, but some things have to get better for him if he's going to make a run here.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 8, we have the co-commish, Eric. We have your squad. How you feeling these days, Eric?
I feel good. I mean, it's very much the same status I was last month when we had this show. I really genuinely like my team. I think it's got pretty solidness all the way around. I think I have the right amount of salary and keepers heading into next year where I kind of like where I'm at. It's just one of those things is, again, we talked about it last show, is Harper going to start hitting some RBIs? Because again, the home runs aren't awful. The OBP is good. The runs are fine. And what the heck's going on with Cody Bellinger? I know he's only 100 at bats in, and we'll see what happens. So it's still kind of early in his season, but he really needs to get going. I got a little bit of reinforcements in Wander Franco. Not great, not awful so far. 50 at bats in, but again, I kind of looked at him as almost like gaining a trade piece because I think he can really contribute to my team the rest of the year. But pitching wise, like I said, I like the moves I made. Getting Barrios and stuff like that. I have a lot of strikeouts. I lead in strikeouts. I lead in quality starts. I'm starting to catch up in saves and stolen bases. But I'm just I don't know what I need out of the team. It's one of those things where I like it and I don't know what else I can really do.
Yeah. There's definitely the squad is definitely kind of almost like a complete squad. I like it. I like a lot of the pieces that you have. I think of all the teams that we've talked about so far, I don't think there's a single team that has more upside for the rest of the year than this team right here. I mean, if you look at just like some of the names that we have, Bryce Harper, Trent Grisham, Cody Bellinger, Rafael Devers, all those guys are probably like top 20 hitters in the league. And then some of the pitching as well. I mean, Robbie Reyes pitched really well for you. Obviously, you're being led by Brandon Woodruff. Jose Barrios is just kind of a rock for you. Descalani's pitched well. I don't know if he's going to continue to do what he's going to do. I don't know if Odorizzi's going to continue with what he's done in a .99 whip. I think there's probably some regression there. Blake Snell, I don't know what your kind of plan is for Blake Snell, but he's been very disappointing. But you have Will Smith on your bench too, if you ever want to go to 4 starters, 3 relievers, and make up some of that ground there. I like some of your flexibility. If you want to go power, if you think that there's some power to be had, you can put Kyle Seager in your lineup for a bit. I think maybe you could try and add some stolen bases, but I think you have some in Robbie Grossman and Chris Taylor. I don't love Robbie Grossman. He's been okay. I don't know what he's done lately. I know he had a hot start to the year. I don't really know what he's been done since.
Right.
But I don't love Gene Segura, Yandy Diaz, and Grossman. But maybe there's one more move you can make to maybe add some utility bats. Maybe give up some of this pitching, or maybe give up a closer and add a better utility bat. Maybe a higher on base percentage guy that's going to steal some bases. But I love kind of the way this team looks. I like kind of the balance that you have here, and I like your kind of prospects here to make a run at the playoffs.
I'm hoping so. And Robert, obviously, he might come back a little too late in the process, but I mean, mid-August, I mean, if I do end up in the playoffs, that's another guy. Instead of starting a Yandy or a Grossman, I could throw him in there, but I got to get there first.
Yeah. My one big question for you is, what are you getting out of Cody Bellinger the rest of the year? Because are you getting Cody Bellinger, who's in the second half is going to hit you 20 home runs and steal you 10 bases? Because that's going to go a long way for you. Or are you getting Cody Bellinger, who through 100 at bats has got 3 home runs? That's a 15 homer pace and a 303 on base percentage, only 2 stolen bases. Hasn't really provided much of anything yet. I don't know if he can turn things around. He's a guy that likes to tinker with his batting stance all the time. He's kind of always tinkering and moving things around. He tinkered his batting stance coming off his MVP season. So I don't really know what's going on in his head. I don't know how well he's going to turn things around, but we'll kind of see. I think this team will go as far as Cody Bellinger will take you.
Sure.
All right. So move on to our next. Did you have your one big question?
That's just, can Eric slug? I need Harper to get ribbies. He's still on pace for about 60. And then, like you said, Bellinger. So I'm right there with you.
All right. So coming in at number 7, we have Chad's team. Which is Seafells. I am liking where Chad kind of sits right now. He has the potential. He has the names. He needs some things to go right for him. He needs kind of his pitchers to turn things around. He needs his sluggers to kind of keep slugging. Nelson Cruz, Franmil Reyes in the utility, getting a lot of home runs, RBIs from those guys there. It's kind of long as they stay in the lineup. Joey Gallo's really turned things around. He needs Blackman to kind of turn things around. I like where he sits. I kind of liked how we got Whit Merrifield a few weeks ago. He's kind of his one-dimensional stolen bases right now. He's the only guy that's really contributing any significant stolen bases. So I kind of like where he stands. I don't know if he's in that contender range. There's a lot that has to go right for him for that to happen. But what do you think of where his team's at?
Chad's team again. I almost want to boil it down to the thing I said earlier: is Giolito, is Nola, is guys like Eflin who started off really good. Are they going to turn it around? Because Giolito can't have a 4 ERA, Nola cannot have a 4.5. Glasnow's on the IL right now. He really needs him back, which isn't going to happen for a while. So honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to Giolito and Nola. Do they come back? Do they contribute? Obviously, there's a lot of offense that's still left to be desired. But I don't hate the offense. I think he's got a lot of good pieces there. I'm not so much worried about that as I am Nola and Giolito. If they pitch well, he's going to climb back up. If they continue this 4 ERA pace, he's going to keep sinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my one big question is, what will his rotation look like in the second half? Not only what the names are in there, but how are they going to perform? Is John Means going to come back? How many rehab starts is he going to need? Is he going to be what he was before the injury? What's he getting out of Giolito? What's he getting out of Nola? Karinchak. He's not pitched as well as he could. He's only got, he's got Bard and Karinchak, who, kind of put him near the bottom in saves. Zach Eflin, he's kind of regressed a little bit. We thought he was going to be one of the top values for $1. He hasn't pitched too well. Tyler Anderson, 4.35 ERA. But I mean, the upside is there. I mean, if his rotation was at full force, he would have a rotation of, as we saw about a month ago, of Aaron Nola, Tyler Glasnow, Lucas Giolito, Zach Eflin as his 5, and
John Means, if he wasn't hurt too. John Means has been great.
So if he were to be able to get some of those guys back in a week or two and kind of get back to full force and they start to turn things around, his team definitely has the upside, but I don't know if that's good enough to put him into contender status. A lot needs to go right before that happens.
Definitely.
All right. So next, coming in at number 6, we have a pretty big faller here. We have Phil's team. Phil's team is Team Special K. As we look at Phil's team, there's a lot to like. I mean, Otani is absolutely carrying him.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I'm not too crazy about. The biggest thing that I've noticed for him is he's finally gotten that regression that we were kind of waiting for from his pitching staff. I mean, Rich Hill has regressed a ton. Malley has regressed a ton. Miley had like a sub 2 ERA for a while. He kind of got rocked recently. Those guys that pitch in Cincinnati, those guys and that warm weather and that small stadium, the balls fly out of there in the summer, so they're kind of getting some regression. You Darvish, who was dealing, he just gave up like 8 runs in his last.
Rich Hill's got to be close to his inning count on the year, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's been close to his career high in innings. Chris Bassett, who's I think he's closer to being just a guy than he is to being an ace. He's pitched well. I don't know how well he's going to pitch the rest of the season. I don't think he's got like elite stuff by any means. So we'll have to see kind of what he gets out of him. So that elite pitching staff, we look at his pitching, he's like, this guy's got, the best pitching staff in the league. I don't really feel the same way anymore. His offense is good. Adding Jose Ramirez certainly helped. Simeon's played really well for him. He just keeps hitting bombs. Kind of unexpected, but I don't know. We'll kind of have to see what happens with his squad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously the Chapman getting rocked like he did too did not help him at all. He's got a 4.5 ERA. It looks like he's had an awful season, which really isn't the case. That's what happens when you're a reliever. But I mean, again, I hate to harken back to almost the first trade of the year, but I mean, he would look even better with Judge as instead of Rogers or some of these other guys up there. But I would say you're right. The pitching. Is there really a guy in there that you 100% trust outside of you, Darvish? And as you mentioned with the spin rate stuff, can you even trust him? I would say yes. But Rich Hill, Tyler Malley, Chris Bassett, are you really trusting that over the course of a season? We're starting to kind of see the fruits of that kind of coming together now. He's got to hope Wade Miley keeps it up and going. But it's one of those things. I think he might have to trade more offense to get another pitcher at some point. I don't really know what, because he's at that weird spot where I don't really know if he can afford to give up much.
I don't
But
think he really has that many assets to move either.
Right.
It's hard to judge what his outlook is, and I don't see where his team improves, and I don't see what he really moves to make that happen. My one big question I have for him is, will he make another splash at the deadline? I don't really know how he makes that happen. Maybe he finds someone who's going to buy Eddie Rosario or Miguel Sano or Hosmer or Gregorius or something, but I don't really know how he really makes that splash happen. I think one of the worst kept secrets in the league is him kind of trying to shop Mookie Betts a little bit. So maybe if there's kind of some interest there, maybe you can kind of send some offers over to him for Mookie. But I'm not really sure what we're getting on him. He's got such a huge lead in head to head. He's going to have a first round bye in the playoffs,
right?
Which is going to be good for him. Maybe he might not even cash in Roto, and he might win the head to head, just because of it. But I don't know. We'll see. That was my one big question, is will he make a splash? Will he be able to kind of replace some of these Tapia, Rogers, O'Neill guys in his lineup? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, another one to think about too is if you think he needs pitching, is a Michael Brantley a guy you look at who's usually a pretty good OBP guy, doesn't have a ton of power right now. I've always been a huge Michael Brantley fan, but if he could afford to maybe swing a Michael Brantley off for a mid-tier pitcher just to kind of hold ground for a little bit, that might be the case. But it's one of those things. I don't think he can afford to give up much hitting, but he needs pitching. But it's tough. He's like right in that middle ground, or he might just have to kind of hold forth the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, coming in at number 5, is going to be Burns when I PV, the commissioner. It is a far fall from the top for me. A little bit in my woes right now. After just losing Acuna for what it looks like a significant injury, things are not looking good for me. For a guy that really needs to make a run here, who's not really in the money for Roto, who is I'm in like 4th, I think, right now in head-to-head. Fifth right now in head-to-head. I could very well fall out of the playoff standings. I like where my team stands. I like what the potential could be, especially after my latest trade. If I look at my biggest holes, I would have to say, like second base isn't great. Ty France. For $1, he's good, but I mean, it could be improved. But I'm going to fill that with Ketel Marte when he gets back. Shortstop has been a hole for me all year, but Seager is probably 2-3 weeks away from getting back. Third base, I've had Chapman in there, and he just hasn't really performed well at all. He's just been very mediocre, but that's what I traded for Bregman for, and hopefully he fills that spot. I liked the way my outfield looked before Acuna got hurt with Mancini, Acuna, Teoscar, Pham, and Gurriel. I'm adding Mullins to that squad, and hopefully Kalenic can come back up and make an impact at some point. But Ketel Marte is also outfield eligible as well if I want to keep France in my lineup. And then I still think I have probably the top, if not one of the best pitching staffs in the league with some of the guys that I have. So what do you kind of make of my prospects rest of the year?
Yeah, I think like you said, kind of take it off where you left off. Your pitching's fine. Big fan of Alcantara. DeGrom's we know what he's done. Kikuchi's been amazing. Pablo Lopez has been good. Skubal, K-wise, ERA-wise is a little high. Whip-wise is a little high, but to kind of keep that in there until your Urquidy comes back, that's not a bad move at all. Or obviously Gallen might have been that until the trade happened. But it's one of those things like, obviously losing Acuna, you can't say, well, you'll have a replacement. It's Acuna. I get that. But when you talk about getting Marte back very soon, I know he's probably going to fill that role at second base, but Bregman comes back very, very soon as well. I don't know what Corey Seager's situation is looking like. It looks like he's going to have a rehab start after the All-Star break. This is just, I mean, you already know this is the biggest what if team in the league right now if these guys are healthy, right? I mean, we're looking at guys like star guys that could be MVP candidates. I mean, you had Corey Seager as an MVP candidate this year, and we'll never know because he didn't really get to play. Bregman is another similar guy in that facet. So your team, by all means, is a very, very good team. I wouldn't, try to sink the boat by any means with any hasty moves. And this is just one of those. If I'm you, I'm either just riding it out and seeing what comes of my team because I don't want to ruin the chances at next year because I think you do have a very good foundation in your roster.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Previously, my one big question for myself was, will I ever get healthy?
Yeah.
And the irony behind that is astounding. What's your one big question for me?
My one big question is how much did Kyle slide under the table to? No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just messing. No, obviously I think the big question for me is now. I mean, how do you keep up with Acuna going down, which looks very significant? Does a Ty France stay in the lineup, who really honestly hasn't done awful for a guy like a Ketel Marte? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So does Marte step in? You need those guys to step in and to play. We'll see if that happens. We'll see if it's able to come together. Your pitching's been great, and you did a good job of kind of finding those guys. Lopez and Alcantara have been great out there in Miami. They got a bright future ahead of them. You needed saves. You needed stolen bases. You got that covered in that trade today. So you were looking really up, but obviously feeling very down.
Yeah. Brilliant way to put it. All right. Coming in at number 4, notice we haven't mentioned a certain blah team yet, but now is your time, Dave. Up to 4 in the power rankings. How about that? Just a blah team. Why don't you take the lead in this one, Eric?
And he's still not gonna like being 4th. I'm gonna hear him later. He's like, I'm in 2nd place. How am I 4th? And it's tied for 2nd now. The roto changing have changed just a little bit so far with the games, but Dave's, if you're going by my elite thing, is elite in 1, 2, 3, 4 categories, which isn't bad. Ks, ERA, home runs, RBI. So he's got a little mix of both. Again, I've said it throughout the whole year. I don't know if that pitching holds. I just don't know. Trevor Rogers, I mean, obviously, other than Max Scherzer, is the best pitcher on his team. And that's not saying that's a bad thing. Trevor Rogers has been great this year. German Marquez has kind of been pretty good this year.
Trevor Rogers will be on a pitch count this year.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember I was mentioning that last time.
Have him in a month.
Yeah. And Marquez is almost a no-hitter, but again, he pitches in Colorado. That ERA can jump to a 4.2 in one start.
And he is prone to implosion. If we look at some of his starts, he's had really good starts. He had really good stretches, and then he'll throw in an 8 earned run game, 12 hits, 8 runs versus Cincinnati. Then he'll pitch well, and then he'll give up 8 runs in 2/3 of an inning versus San Francisco. I mean, if you take those 2 starts out, he'd probably have a sub-3 ERA, but you can't.
And he keeps telling me that. Yeah, but you can't take those out. You can't. Yeah.
As long as he's in your lineup.
And my other thing too is Kyle Gibson. Like if he pitches this way the rest of the year, hats off to Dave. Like awesome that you thought he was going to do that. But like when look at his career and tell me like when is that 229 going to sustain? We're in July. It might, but is that I mean if Kyle Gibson falters at all, his pitching staff honestly I think is in trouble.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Sonny Gray got hurt again. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a lengthy absence. I mean, at the top, if you go Scherzer, Gray, Trevor Rogers, like that's decent. That's really
Sure.
good. The back end, Gibson as your 4. If he can continue this, yeah, like his pitching staff's going to be really good. But I think you're right. I think there's some regression coming his way. He's only got one closer, which means I think his ERA and WHIP is going to continue to rise because typically relief pitchers tend to bring that ERA and WHIP down. But if you keep putting guys like Marquez and Joe Ross in your lineup, I like Joe Ross. I think he's pretty good, but I think you're going to see a little bit of a rise in ERA. He's got Montas on his bench he can throw in there, but he's prone to implosion as well. I don't know when Bumgarner's coming back. Looks like he's throwing kind of some rehab stuff right now,
Sure.
but he was not good before injury anyway. Yeah, so I don't think it's a great pitching staff. I think it's good. It might be good enough to kind of get him to the finish line, but I'm not sure if it kind of will get him all the way to first place when the season
And quickly talking about regression, I mean, as great as Kimbrel's been, is any closer going to sustain a 0.5 ERA and a 0.6 WHIP? It
Is
doesn't
he
matter if
the closer where he gets traded?
right, exactly. I mean, Kimbrel can jump his ERA up to a 2, and that's a fantastic season. Is it really going to hold at a 0.5? It could, but yeah, like I said, I see some regression coming still.
Yeah. So I mean, my one big question is can he weather the storm? Or wait, actually, sorry, that was a little bit. My one big question for him is his offense good enough to win it all? Which I don't know the answer to. I mean, is Javier Baez going to hit 40 home runs this year? With his 281 on base percentage, is he going to steal 20 bases? I don't know. What's he getting out of Adam Duvall? I mean, he's got some really low on base percentage guys. Hunter Renfroe has been good over the last stretch, but is he going to sustain it? Is Austin Meadows going to sustain his pace of 58 RBIs and 16 homers? I don't think Austin Meadows is going to have 35 homers and 120 RBIs when the season's over. Rizzo, is he going to turn things around? I mean, the guys are there. I mean, he's had guys who haven't really played that well, and Rizzo and Cabrian Hayes and some of these guys who can still pop off, but I still think there's a few holes in here. Not that they're holes. I just don't think that I don't think it's a top offense, and I don't think it's a
Right.
top pitching staff.
And Posey too. I mean, we talk about regression. Not that Posey's not a great player, but when
Yeah.
has he shown any of that in the last 3 years? And I know it's the catcher position, but I'm still anticipating some regression. That's why I can't have you too high on the power rankings, Dave. Sorry, I know you're second. I know you've been holding tight the whole time over there, but I'm still waiting for that drop. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah. All right. Coming in at number 3 in the power rankings is going to be Peter. Peter, who's fallen a little bit in our power rankings. We're very high on him. Peter has battled a few injuries so far. The platoon here. He's had some injuries to a lot of his horses. Strasburg and Lamet and Flaherty have gotten hurt. Not that we really expected Nelson Lamet to be healthy at any point during his career. But he's had those guys go hurt. He's had Yelich go down, Canna go down now. Correa just went on IL list. He's had a few injuries. I don't think his team is as ravaged as mine's been by injuries, but his team is still good. His pitching staff is okay. I don't like the guys that he's had to kind of stop the bleeding with when it comes to Jordan Romano and Yarborough and Martin Perez and Merrill Kelly. I don't think those are guys that I want in my rotation getting starts for me. So I don't really love where his pitching's at there. It's all going to depend on when Strasburg and Flaherty can get back for him on what his kind of contender status is. His offense is still good. He's still got some guys that have some question marks. Eugenio Suarez with his 256 on base percentage, not his batting average, his on base percentage is 256. Carlos Correa has never really stayed healthy for an entire season. This has been like his most healthy season to date. Gavin Lux has been really disappointing. Is Jared Walsh going to continue the tear that he's been on, or is pitchers going to try and finally figure him out? Enrique Hernandez has been good. I don't know if that's sustainable. Asbel Garcia has played really well. I don't think he's going to finish the year with 30 home runs. So I don't really love the outlook of his team for the first time all year. but he also has Machado and Anderson in his utility. He's got Christian Yelich, who can certainly turn things around, and he can hit 30 home runs after the All-Star break. He's done it. So I think the upside is still there. He's got to get a little healthy. He hasn't made as many trades this year. He's been, and I've asked him about it. He's just kind of staying put. He likes where he is. I definitely think he needs to add a pitcher or two. And I think if any of the guys that are looking to sell, if Justin wants to take on an Adley Rutschman or Nolan Jones for like a Shane McClanahan, where he can kind of add a C pitcher, I think that'd be something that's in his best interest.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think with the amount of prospects he has, I'm curious who Peter's keepers are next year. But when he's really looking at it, you got Rushman, Jones, Blade on your bench for guys, you could sell. I mean, you could sell those guys and get a pitcher. I know you got Flaherty, Hurt, Lamette, and Strasburg, and you don't want to give up the farm. I get that, but you got a chance to win this thing. And if you can go out there and get a good, really good, solid pitcher right now, and trade away a couple guys that are not impacting your team whatsoever right now, I would do that, because Peter, you don't want to sit too long to the point where it's like, man, I could have won that, but I kind of held too long. Because like you said, I don't see too much wrong with Peter's team, outside of those the flag with the plus sign on it.
Who of his keepers, who would you I'm sorry, of his prospects, who would you keep? Rushman, Nolan Jones, Blade, Drew Waters.
I'd keep Blade.
I don't think I would keep any one of them.
I,
Again,
I mean, if I had to keep one of them, I'd keep Blade. I told Peter in the beginning, I don't think the Rushman move was all that great, because you can get good catchers for $8 right now.
exactly.
I understand, and that's kind of my
You don't
thing
even
with
know if
that.
he's a good catcher, and he's
Right.
not even on the squad yet.
Exactly. So out of those, I would keep Blade, because I think Blade is going to be a stud. But you're right. I don't know if I really keep many of them at all. But if I did keep one, it'd be Blade.
Yeah. I don't think I would keep any one of them. I don't think that Drew Waters is very good offensively. I think he's more of a defensive kind of prospect as well. Blade, maybe. I don't really know a whole lot about him. But for $7, and it's the Julio Rodriguez thing. It's like maybe for $1 I'd keep him, but
Sure.
for $7, I don't think I'm keeping Blade, because he'll probably be $12 by the time he's even up. And for
Yeah.
$12, there's so many better players you can get than what Blade could be. So my one big question is, can you weather the storm? And here's the thing I have about Peter. If you look at where his pitching staff is right now, he's got 4 guys in his rotation that have above 4 ERAs. He's led by Burns. Is Still and Cease going to be on a pitch count this year?
Could be. He's starting to falter a little bit, but if they're competing, who knows? We had that age-old question years ago when the Nationals were competing and they shut Strasburg down. So I don't know.
His career high in innings is this year 87. His previous
Yeah.
high was 73. I don't think they're gonna ride him too hard, and he's kind of had some regression as well. He's had a ton of strikeouts, but the ERA and WHIP aren't there. His pitching staff is not good right now. It really
No.
is. It's actually one of the worst in the league. It's led by Burns, but there's not a whole lot after that. And then his offense is good. It's pretty good. It's got some upside. But if we look at the standings right now, we talked about some teams that could make a run. And if we look at the combined rankings right now, Peter has 67 wins right now. I could see Peter not making the playoffs, which would astound me, judging by how we kind of felt about his team all year and where we're at. But I could definitely see Jay's team is going to take one of those spots. I'm almost sure of it. I could see Chad making a run, and I can see you making a run here and taking Peter's spot out of the playoffs. I mean, I might be knocked out, but we'll kind of have to see kind of what happens with that. But I could see Peter losing that playoff spot and being out of the money sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's why I think he needs to make a move. I really do. I know he's got a lot of those pitchers on the bench. He's kind of waiting for him to come back, but you can never have enough.
Yeah. All right. Coming in at number 2, we have Jay's
Hey,
team.
hey.
Jay making a huge move in the standings in the power rankings. I love where Jay's team stands right now. I am envious of kind of where he's at. His roster doesn't really have too many holes right now. He's got some kind of decent guys. I liked how he picked up Jarren Duran. I had my eye on him. I just don't know when he's going to be up. But he could definitely come in and make an impact. He just got Cole Calhoun back just a few minutes ago. He's going to be activated off IL. He's made every one of his trades, I think, has been great. Really helped his team. I mean, what Brian Reynolds has added to his team when he has kind of had some questionable guys in his outfield. He's got Adolis Garcia in his utility. Adding Ryan Hoskins has really kind of taken his team up to another level. He's got like almost all of his guys have double-digit home runs except for his catcher, which who cares? And then his pitching staff is probably one of the best pitching staffs in the league, if not the best right now. I mean, my pitching staff might be best by the numbers, but if we're going by rest of year, I mean, his guys are pitching really well right now. And I like where he's at. He may need to add a closer. Maybe if I don't think Clase is really going to pick up that many saves rest of year. And my one big question for his team is, can Trey Turner stay healthy? He has been a guy that's been injury prone in the past. And if Trey Turner goes down with injury, who's picking up the slack in stolen bases?
Right. Yeah, not a single soul.
He doesn't really have any 8 stolen bases from Christian Vasquez. Holy shit. But he's getting some guys chipping in here and there, but yeah, he really needs Trey Turner to kind of keep up his tear that he's been on. Trey Turner's been like a top 5 fantasy player this year. 19 bases, 370 on base percentage, 17.
He might hit 30 home runs.
Yeah, he might have 30 home runs, steal 40 bases.
Yeah.
He's been really good this year. I really like how well-rounded his team is. He's got to stay healthy, but his team has championship caliber potential.
I like Jay's team a lot. And the one thing that I'll say from him, and I think he's done a good job actually holding on to him, because I wouldn't have sold low on this guy, but like, what does Luis Castillo's second half look like? Because I've always been a huge Castillo fan. I didn't flock at that 29 salary at all when he got him. Obviously, when you look at his 3-10 record with a 4.8 ERA, that doesn't look good, but if Castillo turns it around and he can, like you said, with the rotation of Cole, Hendricks, Morton, Ryu, stuff like that, that's scary. I mean, that's very scary if Castillo can come back and return to being an ace again, because Jay's team is very much in it. You got kind of turn back the clock years from McCutchen. Reynolds has been great. Austin Riley, what a great guy he's been so far as a $1 player. So Jay's team is really on the up and up right now, and I don't really see a reason why it wouldn't stay up, because Castillo had a 6 ERA the whole year, and Jay's been in the top 5. If Castillo can actually turn into that ace again, that could be that difference.
Yeah, the irony of us at the beginning of the year saying I don't really like his dollar players and how he kind of filled in around the edges.
Not too bad.
He's made a lot of moves, and he's made a lot of really good moves. It's been really beneficial for him.
Yep.
He's going to be right there at the end. He still has some ground to make up before he even gets into the playoffs, but I think he will. If we were to look at kind of what he is doing this week, I think he's playing well this week. Let's take a quick peek here. On the week, he is 8-2 over Peter. So that is actually
big one.
That is actually maybe the beginning of the end for Peter.
Who knows?
Huge. If he could take 8 wins from Peter, that could have some huge ramifications on what things look like at the end of the year. Wow, I did not see. I did not know that was going on right now. So yeah, we like where Jay's at. And then coming in at number 1, we got to tip our cap. He's made a whole bunch of really good trades this year. His team is playing really well. He's leading the way in Roto. He's climbing up in head-to-head, and that's going to be Christopher's team sliding into the DMs. What do you like about sliding into the DMs' team?
Obviously, I mean, the Blue Jay guys, Guerrero, Bichette, have been both amazing. Yeah, for sure. Brandon Crawford, I mean, no one expected that. Brandon Crawford was doing a swan song in San Francisco, and now that team's in first place, and he's having the best offensive season of his career. So that's crazy in itself. But he's really gotten some good production from a lot of guys, and this is, with Conforto finally coming back. Springer has not played this year, so to have him back, he's only getting more and more reinforcements. Justin Upton was great until he went down as well. The only thing, my big question for him is, I know we talked about the Bauer thing earlier, but Rodriguez and Matz can't stay in his rotation long term. So Chris won't stay in first if Rodriguez and Matz are in his rotation long term. I know he's got a little bit of a lead. He's feeling good. But
he passed me in Roto ERA today because of a Stripling start. I had like a 0.3, which is significant lead in ERA. I'm no longer in ERA. He is.
And that's what I'm saying. He's got a really good start. Anderson, Buehler, and Peralta will always be a great 1, 2, 3. So I'm not saying like he's in jeopardy of like missing the playoffs or anything, because that'll hold him the rest of the way. But if he really wants a shot at winning the Roto thing, I don't know if Matz and Rodriguez can stand for another 2.5 months.
Yeah, I think Logan Gilbert will probably slide in there.
Yeah,
Gilbert's not on a pitch clock. But yeah, those are definitely some big holes. I don't have a whole lot of faith in those two. I mean, those are pretty steep career of being pretty average to below average pitchers. Don't like it there, but I mean, he also has Trevor Bauer, who could be cleared tomorrow and could be a freaking horse for him the rest of the year.
Definitely. And that would be, I mean, you could argue if Bauer comes back, easily Chris, I don't want to say sailing by any means, but he can almost sit pat if Bauer comes back, I think.
Yeah. And that's we agree. That's our one big question. It's what is he getting out of Trevor Bauer? Because we think that if Trevor Bauer comes back next week or whenever it is, and he is the stud that he is, then I think this is Christopher's. I think he's going to be wearing a ring at the end of the year.
He can sit back and watch. Yeah.
Yeah. I think his offense is very good. He's had a lot of good quality contributors. I mean, he can add around the edges at the, through the waiver wire with anything he needs. He's got good depth in a few places. He might still even be able to kind of, patch together a trade here and there with, a Benintendi and Edmund for someone who's looking for stolen bases. Brandon Belt, Justin Upton. I mean, he actually has some guys to move where he could even cash in on even a better player if you'd like. And I think he is in a really good spot right now. He can still add. He has pieces to add around the edges. He's another team that could add a pitcher and be really well off. And I think his offense is looking good as well. We really like where Chris is at.
Definitely.
All right. So before we head out, let's take a quick peek. Just want to briefly, I won't display them because that would take too long, but some of the marquee matchups we had in the past, we had Bryce versus Jay. This going back 4 weeks ago. Jay came out victorious 6-3, kind of started getting him on the run that he was on. We had Chris versus Phil, and Phil took 9 categories from Christopher. And that was kind of some big ramifications there because, God, I was hoping that Chris would take some categories and knock him down a few pegs, but Phil is still running away in our head-to-head standings because of it. Week 12, we had Bryce versus Phil, and actually Phil only won that 5-4. So it was kind of good to see Bryce kind of treading some water there, not getting blown out at all. And then Justin versus Chad split 5-5. So I kind of thought that was a matchup where if one person kind of won between Justin and Chad pretty heavily, maybe we could see some selling going on, but it didn't happen. And both those guys are still trying to hang tight and compete. Week 13, we had Chad versus me. Chad won 6-3, but obviously I'm not going to sell. It was a good win for him. If he'd have lost that matchup, maybe we'd have seen him go into a little bit of a tailspin. Jay versus Eric versus you. Jay won 5-3, but not a whole lot's going to change from that. And then this current week, right now, Peter versus Jay is at 8-2 in Jay's favor. That could be pretty significant going forward. And then me versus Chris as well. If it's 5-5 right now. If I can take 5 categories, I'll be ecstatic. I'll be happy with that. I'm just trying to tread water at this point.
I'm trying to help you out. I'm up 9-1 on Phil. So
thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah. So 5 wins would just be huge from this week. Looking forward, next week we have Peter versus Phil. That could be a pretty good matchup. That's going to be pretty huge for Peter. That's going to be a tough one for him to win. And it's could have some pretty big ramifications for him if he doesn't come out victorious. And it's going to be tough. I mean, Phil's not going down without a fight, and he's still got a pretty good team. So we'll have to see kind of what shakes out there. A big one next week, I have week 15, is I have you versus Tyler. Nice voice crack there. You versus Tyler. Is that a loser leaves town matchup? What do you think?
It could be close. I mean, if I 9-1 this week, I'm going to feel pretty good because that'll put me right around. That will put me right around 500. But definitely, I mean, we're both right around the same spot, and it'll be good. It'll be good. So
yeah. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty good matchup. I mean, if you knock Tyler down like 1-9 or something like that, we could see Tyler make some pretty big moves going forward. Week 16, we have Chris versus Dave, and Dave's gonna have a lot of pride on the line for that matchup. If he wants to be considered for the September pod, if he wants to be considered a real contender, he's gonna have to knock Christopher down a little bit. And then Chad versus Jay, 2 teams that are on the outside looking in on the playoffs. We take a quick peek at the standings right now. We have Chad who's in 7th, Jay who's in 8th. That could be a battle for that last playoff spot if one of them comes out victorious and pretty one-sided. So
and as Chad pointed out in the chat real quick, he's up 9-1 this week. So if he has a really good week, he can jump back into that. So that you're right, that could be a really big matchup.
I think that Chad and Jay might steal those playoff spots. Week 17, we have Eric versus Christopher, where you're gonna have a tough matchup. You have an uphill battle to get into the playoffs. We'll see kind of how things shake out there. And then Jay versus Krim. We'll see if Krim is still hanging on for dear life there, what kind of happens over the next couple of weeks, and see if that's kind of a relevant matchup for him. Week 18, we have me versus Dave. We'll see what my team looks like. That's David Luzak Wemble. We'll see if I need the wins or what's kind of going on there, and where kind of David's team stands. Any other comments on any future matchups?
That's about it. I mean, we're getting down to the last about month plus of the regular season for head to head. So it'll be fun to see what happens closer to the deadline.
Really quick, I got the standings pulled up here. Who are your 6 playoff teams that you're predicting?
Phil, Chris, I'll say Dave because I think he's got a good enough lead
Wow,
right
with
now.
hesitancy. You hear that, Dave?
Yeah. I'll say Chris, Phil, Dave. I'm gonna say me,
Oh,
you, and Jay. Yeah. So I kind of agree with you. I think Peter might be in trouble.
I'm gonna go Phil, Chris, Dave. I'm gonna go me, Chad, and Jay. I think that Peter falls out. I think that Bryce falls out, and I don't think that Justin, you, Tyler, really have enough in the tank to kind of get you to the finish line to really kind of take over. I mean that could change if you take 9 categories this week. You're gonna look a lot better, but I don't know if you got the horses to get there.
And that's the crazy thing. I mean, look at the 6 through 12 right there in games back. I mean, that's 5 games back. That's just so close. You could have a 9-1 week. The other person has a 2-7 week and you're ahead of them. I mean, really, it's so close.
The bummer is you might win 9 categories and you might not make up any ground on Chad and Jay.
That is very true.
Yeah. All right. Any closing remarks?
No, that's about it. I'm excited to see where we are a month from now. It'll really start getting tight at that point. So I'm excited to get back rolling then and kind of see where we're at in both standings. It's been fun so far. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot that's going to change over the last couple of weeks. Roto head to head. I think there's lots going to change. The trade deadline. I don't know if we'll have a podcast for the trade deadline. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I think there's going to be a lot of shakeups, and I'm excited for how the rest of the season pans out. Definitely. All right. This has been Kyle, your commissioner, speaking with the co-commissioner, Eric. We've had fun, and we'll see you in a month.